Welcome back to the Washcast, episode 29. Quickly approaching episode 30, and I would be lying if I said that I expected to be going this far into it. Hopefully, we'll be going for quite a while from here. Today's episode is a bit of a special one because this is the first episode of the Washcast that will be completely AI translated into Spanish. That is for my Spanish speaking audience, especially down in Argentina. Amigos Argentinos, I love you. Thank you for being with me. Hopefully you all enjoy this. I will be including the link to the Spanish speaking version down below here in the description. That will be available exclusively on X. Follow me on there at Real Robert Her. Link is also below in the description. My guest today is a libertarian economist based out of Texas, originally from Monterrey, Mexico. He is an incredibly bright mind. We have discussed a lot in this pre-recorded show, everything from the economic situation in Argentina, Javier Milei's rise. It was such a blast to film. And I look forward to having him on again. The show is about 3.5 hours, maybe a little bit longer. So if you need to use the bathroom, do that now. If you need to grab a drink, get ready to buckle up and enjoy the show, because it's one that you're not going to want to miss much of. Before we get into that show, we have a couple sponsors. One of them is my very own business, and we'll get into that first. So this episode of the Washcast is brought to you by Deliver Logistics. Tired of paying a fortune for delivery? Find out how Deliver's customized pricing can put more money back in your business. The link to the description, or the link to the website, is down in the description below. Make sure you check that out. Go to the contact us page if you're interested in our services. We're also have opened up a new investment round that was just announced on Monday. So if you're an investor looking to diversify your portfolio and be part of what I'm calling the future of delivery through regional companies, please click that link as well. That will be down here in the description as well. If you're not an investor and you still want to be able to get involved and help the business grow, you can join our all-new Deliver affiliate program. It's a very simple program. All you do is refer and earn. It's really that simple. You'll get a customized link to a contact form. All you have to do is get someone to fill that out, and we take it from there. We close the sale, and for every sale that we close that you have referred to us, you get 5% of total sales for the life of that contract for the first year. That's it. Simple, easy, refer and earn. This show is also brought to you by Beehive, the newsletter platform built for growth. Using the link in the description, it is an official Deliver Logistics partner link. You can get 20% off for your first 3 months, as well as a 30-day trial. Guys, I use this program myself. Deliver actually uses it for their newsletters. It is an incredible platform. Insane customization, detailed analytics, an awesome website builder that is still improving, and the company is very active. They're active on social media. Their CEO actively engages with people. Members of their team actively engage. They take community feedback, and they make their product better with it. I cannot recommend these guys enough. Their built-in ad network lets you monetize your newsletter super easily. Few clicks, that's all it takes. If you're using Substack, or you're using Ghost, or you're using Constant Contact, it doesn't matter what your use case is. If it's a newsletter, if it's marketing, if it's a full-blown news publication, Beehive has what you need. Link in the description below. Use that, 20% off for your first 3 months. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, Aaron Sepúlveda. Enjoy the show. What is going on, brother? How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for coming on. I've wanted to actually discuss a lot of this with somebody that knows what they're talking about, right? Because you see libertarians online, and most of them are not libertarians. They're either conservatives in an ANCAP flag or whatever. They pretend, right? You don't see a lot of real life libertarians, and especially when you have somebody that is an economist that actually understands it. It's a perfect storm for me, man. So before we
right
jump
now,
into it,
I just posted something exactly for what you said. There's some guys, even in the Bitcoin community, which I love the Bitcoin community, but some other influencers, even though they took econ classes, there's certain topics that they're just not specialists. Like, guys, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Even if you actually have a degree in economics, you have no specialization in this issue, so it's very difficult. And now you're gonna see it on top of all the complexities of being a specialist. Argentina, which is what we're going to be talking about right now, it's a completely different universe on itself. Imagine you're
Oh yeah.
inviting a random guy to talk about Japan. You can't just talk about random people from Japan. And this is true, just so the audience knows what we're talking about. There is literally a saying among economists that we say there's developed countries, developing countries, Japan and Argentina. They're just completely different. It is. You see that
It
that's
is.
why. How did we get an anarcho-capitalist to be a president unless that
Right.
place is crazy? There's just no way out of it.
Right.
When I saw it, I was like, yeah, it had to be Argentina because it has been wild since forever. I mean, just it's not even
Well,
new. Like,
to get that kind of radical change, you have to have been beaten down so poorly, beaten down so bad over an incredibly long period of time for the people to go, okay, you know what? Fuck the last 100 years. We're doing this. Let's try this.
the other
Like,
and this is key, and that's why I like it. You have to have a significant, and that's why the United States is so cool. You have to significant amount of population and territory that is rural, that it grows of agricultural products and of ranching activities, because it does make a difference. And that's key for Argentina. As most of you guys know, Argentina is huge on exporting agricultural products and ranching. If you don't like Argentina beef, you have no soul. Like, literally, just like
yeah.
and,
Well,
and, and it has to be that way.
and the
You guys are gonna see
lithium.
why.
Don't forget the lithium.
Oh, the lithium. But you see, that's a great example. They have had lithium, they're doing nothing because of national pride. Just imagine the national pride, like, oh yeah, we're not gonna let foreigners to come and get our lithium. And then the meantime, like, but nobody's doing anything with it because they were just doing
Sitting
politics.
there.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
there. And we had a perfect example because it was in the same area next to Chile, where they do actually, in fact, try to use maximize the resources. The level of mining, same exact I forget how would you call it, the same exact environment in that area. On one side of the political of the political line, literally, quite literally, the political line, the
Yeah.
Chileans have been able to take full advantage, and the Argentinians, because of politics, they never did anything, just sitting down doing nothing, just there, was just looking at it like, no one should touch it. Oh, okay, go for it.
Makes people wonder why Elon Musk went running down there. But so before we jump into Argentina, let's give the audience a little bit of background on you, what you do, kind of how you came to be this. I mean, let's be honest, an intellectual.
Thank you, appreciate it. Long story short, I teach economics. I work. I also work for the Libertarian Christian Institute and for La Bitcoin conference in Buenos Aires. Mostly because my area of specialization is monetary economics, financial economics to be precise. Obviously macroeconomics in the United States. If you guys follow me on Twitter, you're gonna see that I'm gonna be talking about the macroeconomy on a daily basis, the monetary conditions. Because I live in South Texas, I have to specialize in Mexico, and on top of that, my parents are Mexicans, although I was born in Houston. So northern Mexico is I say that my home is northern Mexico, and South Texas that's my country. Like, literally, just like is one place. We go back and forth all the time. Like, most of my family in Mexico, I go twice a month, once a month to Mexico. I go back and forth. It takes me 3 hours to go inside of Mexico and then come back. I live just right on the border. I'm
That's
very
the
interested.
Monterrey region, right?
Yeah, exactly. My dad was born in Monterrey, and most of my time in Mexico I was spent in Monterrey. My mom's from Mexico City. Some of you guys are familiar with it, so I have a lot of influence from. I tend to make the joke that I'm a half city boy and half rural guy, because Monterrey is a big city, but it still has kind of like Dallas feeling to it. Almost everyone's wearing, like, even in a big city, everyone's wearing a cowboy hat and things like that. You go to Mexico City, it's like New York, like, you know, all the intellectual things and social science kind of stuff. And that double influence has actually influenced me. And that's why the best way that I could find it was to start learning economics when I was a kid. Long story short, my dad was a famous bullfighter. Then later he became a trader. Yeah, later he became a trader. The stories of my dad are the best ones. My students love them because when I teach economics, I always start with a story that technically has nothing to do with it. And when I catch their attention, and when they don't notice, I start talking about economic theory, and they're like, "Sir, we're learning. We were not supposed to be learning." I say, because I caught your attention.
Exactly.
Well, you say, no, one cool story, that one that always grabs attention. Like, oh yeah, there was one time my dad, when he was young, he was chased down by an Amazon forest tribe because they wanted his chest, because they had never seen a man with hair in his chest. That's just the kind of guy my dad is. I'll tell you stories later on, but just so you guys understand what's going on. So cool stories and all that. My dad was a trader. Once he stopped being a bullfighter, he switches to being a trader. For some of you guys might be familiar, like health food stuff. If you guys are familiar with it, like, I don't know what type of health food stores you guys have over there, but like, let's say here locally we have Sprouts. That's the common one. Vitamins and all that kind of stuff. My dad would actually go all the way to LA and San Francisco. Big influence for me. The fact that San Francisco going down hurts me a lot, because when I was a kid, some of the best memories were we would actually go to all the way to LA, get a lot of products from the Chinese, Koreans, and Japanese from there, because they would just bring them right away, right? Take them to Houston, where I was born, cross them through where I live right now in the border, take them to Monterrey, and then sell those products all over Mexico. My dad, for 10, no more, like 20 years, he was doing that. He was Monterrey, crossing through the border, going to Houston, LA, and then going back. One of those trips, I was born. And that's why I'm an American.
I was gonna say that's a long trip too. I mean, that's not just a couple hour drive. I mean, that's
well, yeah, we will have to go, and we will have to go through it. Actually, that's when I learned a lot of business, why I like economics, and learn from my dad. I remember when I was a kid, he was doing some business in LA, San Francisco, actually. And then my brother was translating, my older brother. He's like 8 years older than me.
Wow.
And then when he was translated with the Koreans, I think, and then they give him the price, let's say, right? So, it's going to end up being $10. And then my dad immediately thinks that, yes, I think I can sell it for 20. And I was a kid, and I was like, dude, twice the price? Like, that's kind of abusive. Later, when I grew up, no, dude, that doubled up is because you have to pay the trip, you have to pay the this and the tax. I was gonna say tax, but really, my dad never paid taxes. We'll discuss that one. That's another one. My dad never paid taxes.
He was a very smart guy. That's
never, ever paid tax. He was famous. He would always get away with stuff. He was famous among the famous, but not famous among the population. This is super. I will go to restaurants, and instead of like bunch of people coming in, it was politicians, actors, and singers that would stand up and go say hello to my dad. The most of the people didn't know who he was, but famous, right, because bullfighting is kind of like a high social capital and a high hierarchy kind of thing, where the famous look up to them. Is not the general populace. So he could get away with a lot of stuff, like a lot of stuff that nobody could. He just got away with. I learned that, okay, there's a lot of cost of bringing stuff over here, the logistics, finding someone that actually wants your stuff. Sometimes you actually have to invest, as most of you invest on some of the new products, give them away for free or heavily discounted. So you have to be always planning. And then after 20, if you can give discounts, maybe it's worth it, but you need that kind of space to handle it. So I started learning that. And actually, most of you guys, I would consider myself an Austrian economist. My big point of reference is Hayek. And one of the big things that Austrian economics pushes is, says, guys, costs do not determine the price. And most farmers know that. It can cost you millions of dollars to produce, but if your customers don't want to pay you the $1 million, that's not the price. The price is what the customer says. And usually what we call Keynesian economics will be kind of like the other, a little more statist economic. Usually they try to figure everything out from cost. And we're saying no, because the costs are just is the expected. So, well, I'm going to pay $1 million in total for all this because I think my customers are going to pay me more than $1 million. Hopefully I don't mess up. Hopefully I just don't mess up. And that's the type of economics. We always think, what is the entrepreneur expecting of the future? Time is super important for us. It's not just like buy, sell, that's it. No. Buy, transform, transport, figure it out. I mean, that entrepreneur process, it's super important. And nobody talks about it. Everyone just takes it for granted.
I learned it the hard way.
There you go.
My first year, well, I shouldn't say my first year, my first full year in business. I actually got like my own customer instead of working for another client. And so I'm sitting there and I'm breaking down my potential costs. And I'm like, okay, I want this business. So I lowballed the absolute fuck out of myself. And I barely made it by for that first year. So I focused on that. I focused on service. I'm like, okay, well, how can I take the situation that I'm in and keep it at a point where I can make more money? I hit my clients with a pretty large price increase the following year, and they didn't bat an eye. But I had to learn through that first year of making zero. I think it was, my first year was only a half a year. It was a $40,000 loss. My first full year was a $70,000 operating loss. And now this year, we finally, hopefully my tax guy changes this and it becomes a zero, but it looks like we've made about 25,000 this year. So I had to adjust that on the fly.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. If it starts sounding odd, let me know, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, those are the things, and we focus a lot on the entrepreneur, what the entrepreneur does throughout time. Most of your audience might probably like this one. Money is the medium of exchange. Time is the medium of production. And its production of value is not just like the physical thing. Is you produce something, yeah, okay, you grow stuff, okay, but that's not just growing. It's actually selling, finding customers. For most of you guys probably know, and I make this connection. I don't know if you guys are familiar with yerba mate, which is a drink from South America. Highly recommended, guys. If you guys want to get into yerba mate, you can drink it all day long. For those
it's an acquired taste.
Oh, there are ways around that. Don't worry. I figured it out because it was weird. Because since I'm an American, no matter what, right? Like my family is Latino, but American. I figured out with like milk and sugar and whatever. Because it was if you don't do that, then your brain was like, oh, what's going on? Yeah. But highly recommended because most people, and this is what, and I noticed in Argentina, because I've been going to Argentina. Those that want to stop smoking, that's one of the best ways to stop smoking because a lot of the smoking is more like social and whatever. When you have all day long something to drink that calms you down, that gives you focus, your brain little by little starts forgetting about it. And I noticed that Argentinians don't know this. But when I went to Argentina, compared to Mexico, because I go to Mexico and Europe a lot, you compare Mexico and Europe, almost everyone smokes all the time. Everywhere you go, that's it. Smoking is life. I went to Argentina and I'm not joking, instead of being 90% people smoking and 10 not, it was exactly backwards. 10% people would smoke normally and 90% just wouldn't. And I was like, what? I'm happy here. Like, I'm not going to complain, right? And one of the things that I don't have to smell it. Exactly. One of the things that I figured out is that a lot of people never get into smoke. It's a cultural thing, right? Like people don't think about it. Don't even make it to smoke because usually when they're like making time, usually we making time in between. Sometimes people go and have a smoke in between activities or whatever. Unintentionally, Argentines and Uruguayans, which are the ones that drink, and Brazilians from the south. You gotta be fair with my Brazilian follow. Yeah, I love because they're hilarious. I love them. Instead, naturally, just you grow up drinking yerba mate. When you're in between activities, you don't even think about, let's say, smoking or something like that. You go and drink some yerba, come down, come back. It just becomes part of the culture, and that's incredibly healthy. And since I don't like the smell of smoke, even though when I will go to Mexico, everyone, family and all that, everyone would do it. Yeah. I had to find a way. One of the reasons now, going to why a son of Mexican trader bullfighter knows so much about Argentina, it's because of this. In the 90s, when I was a little kid, long story short, most of you guys know soccer. That soccer is a big thing in Latin America. At some
soccer
point,
is life in Latin America.
Exactly. When I will go to, I tend to tell people, so when you go to Mexico, if you don't play soccer, you don't do anything. Literally, because that's literally how you make friends. Like there's no, Like nobody thinks about any other way to make friends. So you go out in the streets, neighborhood, and play soccer there with people. So we were watching some Argentines. My favorite player was a Mexican goalie, really short but super, how to say, but super good, Campos, and nobody could beat him. And then now one of my heroes, Batistuta, an Argentine forward, just slaughtered him 2 goals in a final in some Copa America championship. And I was freaked. I was like, no, because nobody could beat. That was just this small, and he just stopped everything and whatever. And then this Argentine guy in some final did it and said, and I learned when I was a kid is when everyone almost beats you up, instead of getting mad, you have to learn from them so they don't beat you anymore. So I started getting informed about learning about Argentinian culture and all that kind of stuff. And then I became an economist because in the 90s, there was a big devaluation of the peso. That's why right now I'm a monetary economist because my family was kind of, you can say, like upper middle class until I was around 12. And then my dad, who was amazing because in Mexico, our house was in a low income neighborhood. And one of the reasons was because my dad specifically grew up in a low income household, neighborhood. And this is key for all of you guys who are going to have kids. The rule was this: in order for you to appreciate everything that I do for you, my kid, my kid, have to go through what I went through. If you don't go through that, then you just take everything you just take everything for granted. So I actually went through a lot of the stuff that that my dad went through it, and I appreciate it now. And what they usually did was we will have nice trips, like everything, the same lifestyle of my dad, even though we had enough money to live comfortably, about the same, but rules like we couldn't have new. This is not a joke. We could not have new clothing. All of the clothing had to be secondhand. If you needed fancy clothing, use your dad's fancy clothing that he would use, and even he would do it to himself. For business, brand new clothing makes perfect sense. For business, the rest, no. You don't need to. Ask your older, siblings and cousins if they have some extra clothing. Don't overspend. There's absolutely no need for that, and we'll have enough money to travel for sure. I actually knew all the history of the United States because we were traveling to the United States all the time. Guess what? Because we would not overspend during the year, and we had more than enough money for the summers to go throughout all the United States. We went to Canada when I was a kid. We went to Europe because we were never overspending throughout the year. That was something my dad. Guess what? When we become poor because of the valuation, it shouldn't be hard for you guys to figure it out. From one day to another, it was super crazy. The peso went from 3-1, very stable, to 6-1, which means my dad's merchandise was twice as expensive as before from one day to another. His customers were like, dude, we can't do that. So my dad's business collapsed and all that kind of stuff. And he came to tell and say, hey, mijito, that's the way Mexican parents talk to their kids. Mijito, just be ready. We're not middle class anymore. We literally right now we became dirt poor. We saved the house, but that's about it. And I asked him, okay, but why? And he says, well, the peso devalue. And I was like, yeah, of course, but why did it devalue? And then my dad says, look, I'm a businessman. I don't know those things, but I just know that everything became more expensive. And he says, go and figure it out. And I became an economist. I did figure it out.
Wow.
Is it very cool?
Let me ask you on that note, what was it? What was the moment that caused that devaluation? Because I mean, overnight is insane.
Yes. Okay. It's very similar to what happens in Argentina. Nobody wanted to learn. Actually, they call it the tequila effect. Some of you guys are old enough. If you guys want to research, we tend to make jokes that okay, this is one that is hilarious. The Mexican economists like Friedman, most of you guys are probably familiar with Chicago School, maybe. There were Milton Friedman. They were telling the Mexican government, do not have the exchange rate 1-to-1, because as it starts devaluing, you have to get rid of your dollars in order to take away from circulation. The other one is when it starts devaluing, the government has to spend a lot less. But how likely it is, except Milei, that the government is going to spend less? More than likely, they were saying, since it's not going to happen, just let it go up and down. Just the exchange rate, just let it go. long story short, this is a true story, and I tell my students that laugh. One very skillful economist, Aspe, that was his last name, wrote a book, Economic Development the Mexican Way. And we tend to make jokes. You can imagine when you're following a book that says economic development the Mexican way, that something's gonna go wrong. You just know something's gonna go wrong. You just know that. So long story short, there was some scare in '94 because there was like a guerrillas, that's how it's called in English, guerrilla, the guerrilla in the South. Zapatistas, some people are familiar with it. There was an uproar, and I remember they killed one of the candidates. Like in '94, it was very iffy. There were three things that were big. They killed one of the candidates because there was some type of election. They killed a very important archbishop in Guadalajara. We thought it was the cartels, like within 3 months.
Right.
And then there was a Zapatista uprising, some guerrilla in the south. So you and every single one of our audience can imagine, if you have $1 million in Mexico and that is happening, what are you gonna do? Keep it there, or you're gonna take it immediately, right?
So I was gonna say that was right, because that would have been what, the 90s, right?
90s, 94. Very
so that would have been coming off the heels of Pablo Escobar's death, and the Mexican cartels getting that massive boost in business, right?
You might be right. I never thought about that. It could actually be because the Mexican
because 93 is when Pablo Escobar was killed.
More than likely, you're correct, because he was the double, and probably we do believe that the archbishop execution, because it was really like an execution, was probably related to the cartels. But you might be right. I never thought about that one, that it was related, because obviously Escobar needed people in Mexico. But usually when you kill or capture one of the big ones, the followers or the people below them take over, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, or it's going to happen to be in the same country. Could be in another country. That supply chain maybe ends up being taken over by someone else outside of the country, and you might actually be right. So more than likely that and so there you go. Foreigners immediately start taking away their dollars out of it. And in order to keep it, and this is what would happen. Hey, let it devalue. What happens right now, by the way, I've been coming on Telemundo, I'm not kidding you, like 4 times a week. Wow. Because the exchange rate is a big thing. And right now the exchange rate devalues and everyone has questions, but the macroeconomy is stable because they learn, just let it go up and down. Tourists and imports and exports industries are going to have to take the hit, but the rest of the economy is kind of protected. But the rest of the economy is kind of protected. That's what is happening right now, and it actually kind of works. So back then, instead of just letting it devalue and just let the import-export industries take the hit and the rest of the economy be kind of safe, with the few dollars they had, they were buying pesos away from circulation so that the exchange rate wouldn't devalue. At some point, you run out of dollars and you're like, what do I do if I don't have any more dollars? Boom, collapses, because the existing pesos, nobody wants them. Nobody wanted the pesos because they were afraid to invest in Mexico. They get rid of the pesos, get dollars, and then get out of the country. So it immediately... you have to go back.
Rate
there you go. There you go. Put it on 5-year. I was gonna tell you, we probably... Okay, there you go. You see that downward means that the peso, that the downward slope means that the peso was appreciating, therefore the dollar was losing value before the peso. Now, when it starts going up towards the end, that means that the dollar is going up and the peso is going down, and that's fine. It just means, for example, I live in the border, right? When the on the peaks, like right now on 20 something or whatever, I can go buy stuff with $1. I buy 20 to 25 pesos worth of stuff. Pretty good for me. Last 2 years, before the last couple of months, the exchange rate went to 15 to 1, which means now my dollar would only get me 15 pesos. So I will go to Mexico less, or I will buy less stuff in Mexico than usual. And so we're the ones that kind of take the hit. So you guys are protected and people inside of Mexico get protected. So that's kind of like it's kind of like the way the way it works. They didn't do that in 94. They just got rid of they were just wasting. In Argentina, in a long way, for 30, 40 years, they've been doing this every 10 years. They didn't learn from the Mexican experience that no, you cannot just try to keep the exchange rate is fixed. Sometimes in order to not waste their dollars, they would actually make it illegal for you to exchange dollars in Argentina. It was like a big deal. One of the big things that made Milei won in Argentina was that he was telling people, hey guys, by the way, you guys are going to be able to buy and sell dollars. I'm just going to let you do it. I'm not going to go after you. Just promising that got like half of the population say, yes, we need this because this is crazy. I show my students, which is hilarious. I don't know if you guys knew this. You see, understand how the situation in Argentina is. There was a period of time where police dogs were not trained to smell drugs anymore. You're never going to believe what were they trained to detect.
Dollars.
I want you to, yes. They would actually go around when you were getting out of the country to Uruguay, because it was very normal. You would keep, let's say, $1,000 in a bunch of $100 bills. You would deposit them in Uruguay because it's safer. The government is actually, it doesn't matter if it's left or right. It's actually just safer in Uruguay. So they would take dogs around to try to figure out if you had some physical dollars in your car. They were not looking for drugs. They were like, no, that's secondary. Imagine this. This is the kind of things. And sometimes it was like some exchange rate houses. I don't know if you guys will call it that way. Sometimes they had to be. And I actually lived through this. The bad thing about having Milei right now giving freedom is that you don't get this experience anymore. But for example, I experienced when it was illegal for you to sell dollars to locals, and they will give you pesos you spend around. There was the exchange rate house was not like a typical business. You were going through a main street. You would kind of go as like, hey dude, where can I get dollars? And so, oh, the flower shop. And the flower shop was not really like the shop. It was one of the kiosks, you would call them, like on the sidewalk. And then there was a kiosk that in the front is selling flowers. And then you make a line, and instead of people getting out with flowers, they would just get in and then get out. And you have to go to the back. And then some lady in a small little place was actually counting pesos with a little machine, counting pesos and counting dollars, and then chit-chatting with you about, like, some of my friends are from Spain. When we go to Argentina, I go with people from Spain. And so the accents are different. And she started talking, oh, you guys from Spain? So, oh, no, he's from United States, but his parents are Mexican. Chit-chatting as she was counting pesos. The most illegal thing that you can imagine in Argentina. We were just chit-chatting about counting it. But it was in the back of a flower kiosk in the background. And the front was pretty much just literally front. Nobody was buying the flowers. And it was common. That's the kind of things that obviously at some point people were going to get tired. Imagine your life when you want to save some cash. You can't do it in the local currency because it values right away. You have to go to a flower shop quietly to the back. People were just, this is crazy. It's been the last 20, 30 years going through this. Someone has to do something. And Milei was very specific about what he was going to do. He wasn't just saying vague abstract stuff. He was saying, I'm going to do this. 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 And people will tell you, whether you like him or not, he tells you what he's going to do, and you can make him accountable for it.
Yeah. Now, and those regulations were part of, if not exactly, what led to the rise of the blue dollar in Argentina.
That's the blue dollar. What I'm telling you is that I'm glad you're telling it. For long, and now the farmers are coming into place. For farmers and ranchers, right? Farmers and ranchers in Argentina, since it has to be official, you really cannot do, how to say, massive sales cannot really be done in the black market. So farmers have to put up with the government when they want to sell to foreigners. So when they will sell to foreigners, they will get paid in dollars, but the government would not allow the dollars to go into your account. They will get the dollars and they will deposit pesos in your account. And they would deposit the exchange rate that they chose. And it wasn't kind of odd. Imagine that on the streets, with $1, you were getting 1,000 pesos. This is called the blue dollar. And I'll tell you why the word blue is hilarious. But the government, when foreigners will buy a bunch of, like, you would just sell in mass, the government will get the dollars, not you. And instead of depositing 1,000, which was the market rate, they would deposit 400, 300. And farmers and ranchers were like, oh, and on top of that, and that's what they call it. And sometimes it was hilarious because it was the deposit. Oh, and by the way, let me tax it anyway. They will give you less, and they will still tax it, which it was crazy. So For example, we tend to say the difficulties of Argentina. There was one time, so you guys understand that why it's so difficult for even somewhat people trained in economics. Remember we said that some libertarians don't know what's going on. There was one moment where Milei made that difference from 1,000 to like 800 or so, right? Just doing that, whether people understand it or not, that is lowering taxes, because now you're getting dollars, and farmers and ranchers were being deposited, instead of 300 pesos, they were being deposited 800 pesos. Then in order to compensate, because he needed that money, he had to raise another tax. And people say, look, he's raising taxes. No.
That was the country tax, right?
I think so. If I think you're correct. He said, yes, dude, the problem is that I'm actually lowering taxes through other venues that are not so visible. United States, we're blessed that we don't. Just imagine this, that they raise your taxes, but instead of actually telling you, I'm going to raise your taxes, when you get paid, in what currency? They deposit a cheaper currency. That's not a tax. I'm just giving you the official rate. No, that is a tax, because I want to get paid in dollars, and you gave me a rate that has nothing to do with it. When he gets rid of that, people say that, oh, that's not a tax. No, it is. And libertarians, a lot of people, and I try to be nice to them because obviously they don't understand, right? But let's be realistic, guys. Life outside the United States is very different. To try to give opinions about these things, it's super complex. I actually got involved in Argentina for cultural reasons, right? But on top of that, my brain was already, I need to study economics, because I told my dad I was going to figure it out. And I came back home saying, yes, Dad, I figured it out. The first time I came out on Telemundo, it was pretty cool, because for reasons that are kind of weird, Telemundo in South Texas also comes out in cable TV in Monterrey. So literally we're like one unit. Our TV shows come out in their cable news. So they were able to see me live on Telemundo. So I come back the next day or 2 days before after, and my dad tells me, mijito, I'm so proud of you. I got to see you in Telemundo. Well, the reason why I tell you guys these things is like I had to figure it out, why the peso devalued. And by 2002, guess what? There was a huge devaluation in Argentina. So I had to keep track of it, because the situation was almost identical. And they don't learn that. And then it kept on happening several times. Some of my friends from Argentina, remember when the Ukraine war started, the ruble started to devalue very heavily. I don't know if you guys remember that part. And everyone was talking about, oh, there's a devaluation, and then there's capital controls in order to prevent it, which means they start controlling your bank account sales for big companies. And my Argentine friends like, oh, there's a currency devaluation, economic crisis. And then some of my friends were saying, in Argentina, we call it a Wednesday.
Yeah.
It just happens. And it is not a joke. It happens every 5 years, maybe. Every 5 years, something like that.
2002 would have been Duhalde, right? He was a Peronist.
I think you're correct. I think it gets really messy, because now some other one, there's no really like ideology that perfectly matches. Peronism is, imagine the most pragmatic Democrat. Peronism, and I actually even call it cultural Peronism, because it actually goes through this. What they do is really simple. Most people should figure this one out, that it's not too hard. You get bunch of groups, workers, steel workers, farmers from whatever. They have different interests, and they say, look, guys, let's all vote for me, and I'm going to get the budget, and I'm going to spread out the budget. Yeah, but we don't agree ideological. It doesn't matter. Just vote for me, and when I get the budget, everyone gets a piece. Nobody cares. Like, that's the difficulty of politics. Politicians don't care about ideology. You guys have to figure that one out. When they try to criticize Trump for being inconsistent, or Obama, guys, politicians are not ideological. They have to create coalitions in order to get enough votes, of people that most of the time don't have the same interest, but they kind of come to an agreement. You have to kind of make them figure out. In Argentina, what I just told you, Peronism is the perfection of coalition. For example, some of the most conservative, and this happened in Argentina, some of the most conservative rural people had to vote next to feminist and kind of like woke people and whatever for 10 years, because they will win. And the agreement, I mean, in the agreement wasn't even like super like obvious, right? It was like the feminists and all that, we're going to create some type, and Milei had to close some of the secretaries, that's how, department of non-discrimination against people that have, and I'm not kidding, because they make these super long titles for the departments.
Yeah.
And it was just getting a bunch of people like how to say, in the university that have no jobs and there's no way that they can ever find employment, and just put them in there and post
Oh,
stuff
you
on
mean kind of like what we're doing right now? Yeah,
no,
like
yeah,
the
but
last
by the
4
government.
years under Biden. Yeah, the last 4 years under Biden, almost all of the jobs that were created, as he put, were public sector jobs, not private sector.
Oh well, this is kind of like the issues, and honestly, they believe, and that's what I'm telling you. There is a very close relate for Biden. If I'm correct me if I'm wrong, it's not just the people that like a feminist and kind of left cultural progressives. It was also the unions. Farmers have to
Yeah.
be very careful with union workers, guys. Be very careful. They're not necessarily your friends. Maybe sometimes they are, but not necessarily. Well, for the Biden administration, correct me if I'm wrong, most of the unions voted for Biden, and most of the people from the universities that are like really into woke culture and all that kind of stuff, they voted for it. And the agreement is, we protect you on this area, and you get jobs doing, like and there were some killer. I'm not. This is not false, guys. This is how crazy it is. There were some people that got a job working for the government as intermediaries of welfare. This is what it meant. Just so you guys know that.
Oh,
Poor
this is
people.
Argentina did this.
It's in Argentina. It's Argentina. Is you guys, they hire one or two guys and says you go to certain place where they get welfare. Now, the poor people are not going to get the welfare directly. The intermediary is gonna get it. Some type of informal bureaucrat, and the informal bureaucrat literally has the welfare in them and says, "I'll give you the welfare if you show up to this protest." On the weekend, poor people had to go to the protest, say, "Hey, look, we're here to protest about random stuff they didn't even know about it." Okay, then you get the welfare. Or like cancer treatment that the government provides. Hey, I'm not joking. This is not a joke. Cancer patients had to go to protest because the informal intermediaries were actually telling them, you have to show up. No, it's because I'm sick. Hey, you have to show up. That's just part of that's the way it is. You see, don't worry. Like, imagine a libertarian worrying about like, oh, but you haven't lowered taxes. Dude, we have all these gigantic problems like this one. Just simply getting rid of that intermediary. Poor people voted for an anarcho-capitalist because he was the only one that had the guts to get rid of those bureaucrats.
Well, and let's not forget the fact that those intermediaries that were going and saying, "Hey, we'll give you your welfare if you show up to this event." Well, say the government delegated say $1,000 per person. That intermediary was taking $500 to $600 right off the top, and then they were distributing the 400. So it was a Ponzi scheme.
Completely. And this is the issue. And actually, I heard it because I wasn't completely sure about it. One of the famous journalists in Argentina, by far one of the best ones, very close, became friends with Javier Milei. He was the first TV personality to let him be in national television at night, where not everyone watches or whatever, very very night, in talk shows for like 2-3 hours. That's very common in Argentina, which is very interesting. That they love to talk. So when I go over there, we never run out of things to talk. And in one of the interviews he was doing after Milei became president, he was saying, "Poor people love you because indirectly you raise their welfare payments, because all Milei had to do was to get rid of that intermediary, and now people were getting the original. Even with inflation, poor people, that's why poverty collapsed really quickly, because now poor people were getting their typical welfare at the normal rate, as you said it. There was no more pay cut because there was no intermediary anymore."
That journalist, was that Jorge Lanata?
No.
No.
Fantino. I love that guy. He's Fantino. That's his name. Tall, tall blonde guy, philosophy and sociology expert. He's just the guy. And this is what. So you guys know this: soccer and politics in Argentina. No, soccer, politics, and culture are the same thing in Argentina. There's no distinction in between. This person, I'm telling you, Fantino, he would have a night show called Animales Sueltos, like animals. animals. I don't know how we call it in English. Sueltos would be like left on the wild. I guess that would be kind of like animal left on the wild. He actually allowed him to come, and that
Lucky
was
animals.
lucky animals maybe at night.
Yeah.
Let's say a Friday night, and then you get Milei talking about Austrian economics, Keynesianism, monetary policy. Next day in the morning, the same guy Fantino. I'm not talking about Milei anymore. Fantino, after talking about super sophisticated economics, that guy is the narrator of soccer games.
Oh, no
Have you
kidding.
seen it? Yeah. And then the next day, he comes in a talk show, not talking about politics and economics, but talking about soccer and how to say the new teams from Europe, so on and so forth. Everything is super mixed, and this is things I learned when I went to Argentina. For example, they're so interrelated that never in my life I had ever seen. Because sometimes I watch Mexican TV, because some of the soccer teams and soccer players I like, they're from Mexico. Never in my life since I was a kid did I ever heard a Mexican soccer commentator ever mention anything of politics. That's almost, it's not that it's illegal, it's just part of the culture that usually, actually there was one time they kind of talk about something and it was like, well, maybe the government should allow some of the empty lots to be used for soccer. That's the most political thing I heard in like 15 years or so. In Argentina, you're listening to a radio show, and as they're talking about soccer, they unintentionally switch to politics, and then within 20 minutes they switch back to soccer, and then within 40 minutes they come back to economics, and then Fantino, he's very well read, so the guy Fantino starts talking about philosophy and epistemology, how we learn. I'm not exaggerating, guys. Well, why Milei was so amazing. Goes into Animales Sueltos, starts talking about economics. Oh, but it's gonna matter in a couple of minutes. Money demand, like for example, he was talking about like, creating money is bad. If there's high money demand, which means high money demand means people not spending. I hope that makes sense to people. You're demanding money instead of goods, so you don't spend. And he was explaining when there's high money demand, that's not a problem. The problem is that these people, the Peronists and Cucas, that's another name we use for them, Cucas, they're creating money, but there's no money demand. No,
The
as soon as people,
cockroaches.
there were that people, many people will figure that out. If something is devaluing, you hold into that money and immediately get rid of it because you don't want to hold on to it, right?
Right.
And that's what we call low money demand. You keep it a very small, a very small amount of time. And but you see they're raising the money supply well above money demand and things like that. And as they're discussing, I'm not joking, they switched to soccer, and Milei cites studies of why it's easier to get low-skilled teams to win high-skilled teams. It's easier to find, it's easier for low-skilled teams to win high-skilled teams in soccer than in basketball because of the frequency of attacks. It says because in soccer is so long, you have less attacks. So it allows for more randomness. So the high-skilled guys get 2 or 3 opportunities. The low-skilled guys get 2 or 3 opportunities. If you get lucky, the high-skilled guys mess up, and then the low-skilled guys just get lucky and score 1, and then you get 1-0, and then you won, right? In basketball, it's almost impossible because even if within a couple of minutes the high-skilled guys don't score a lot, and for some reason the low-skilled guys score a little bit and they're winning, there's so many, the frequency is back and forth so much that at the end high skill is going to win no matter what. So that's why you get more surprises in soccer than in basketball. Dude, he was just talking about Austrian economics and the money supply, and within 20 minutes he switched to why there are more surprises in soccer than in basketball. And then he switches
and he was using the same logic.
Exactly. That's why it comes out like, so they're talking about something like, oh yeah, no, that reminds me why it's easier to find surprises in soccer. Oh, well, how come? Well, there was a study done in such and such, and it was just in the same discussion. It was just natural. That's the most usually say that's the most Argentinian thing in the world, to switch topics and then switch into crypto, and then switch into like as you go along. That's why people were surprised with him, because they were saying, I don't know what an anarcho-capitalist is. I don't know what Fantino, that is very well read, 2016, if I remember correctly, that's when Milei came for the first time in national TV with him in Animales
Yeah.
Sueltos. He said he heard, but he didn't understand what a libertarian was. So he had to ask a lot of questions. Okay, but who are you? And I remember there was a time that he couldn't understand what a libertarian was, and he was like, okay, Fantino starts asking, okay, I'm going to give you some names and you tell me what you think about them. And it was something like, I'm trying to figure out, like, he was exaggerating, obviously, right? Reagan is, well, kind of commie. Like, he was like, well, Reagan was kind of, Thatcher, a little bit less commie. And he would kind of be going like that. He said, well, you think those are Friedman? Nice guy, but still kind of like in the commies. And so they start making jokes about it because it was hard for them to figure it out what the heck a libertarian was, because in Argentina, as most of you guys are figuring out already, the state is everywhere. The bureaucratic, and this is the bureaucratic. If we think things are bad imagine that the lifestyle of Washington D.C. was kind of spread out all throughout the nation because everybody wanted to work for the government, because obviously the government can ensure that you have a safe income no matter what. But in the private sector, there's no such a thing as having a secure income. So if the government says, I'll give you a secure income as long as you, this is the key, guys, as long as you vote for me, but you get me not your family and your neighborhood. This happened in Mexico, and that's what what I call cultural parentism, because it's just in Mexico. I learned that there was a party, PRI, we used to call it. For 70 years, it was the same party. And instead of being repressive and, oh, we're going to stay in power no matter what, they were very smart. They would actually go to the neighborhoods. They would go find the lady that would, like, the one that would talk the most, and the one in Spanish we call it lideresa, the one that is like the leadership lady. There's always a neighborhood lady, and they will go tell her, look, we're going to help your family. Just make sure that the entire neighborhood votes for this candidate. The lady doesn't know anything about politics or anything like that. And go to the next neighborhood, same exact thing. Okay, sure, we're going to help your family. Just make sure that your family and the entire, and this happened in Mexico. This happened in Argentina. In Chile, happened a lot less because of the changes but still, lots of changes had to be made after the 70s, so on and so forth. So this is the politics that people live. What?
It's Marxism. I mean, that's cultural Marxism. We do it here, where instead of going neighborhood to neighborhood, we go to the black community and we say, hey, get all your black friends to vote for me. Or we go to the LGBTQ and we say, hey, get all your gay friends to vote for me.
You know what?
Concept.
You hitting that one. If I remember correctly, because I was like, it just makes sense. One of the guys that is anti-woke, Lindsay or something like that, one of the ones that made the hoax, something like that. He was saying that he noticed what you just said, that he noticed when he was reading all of that garbage literature, no matter what, every single paper would always try to do exactly that. After they do all everything's problematic, and says, therefore, this community should create a voting block. Voting blocks in English is that should create a voting block with this other community that, although they're not identical, they have this. They were looking for things for people to complain. How do we get people that can complain about this?
Creating an oppressed class.
Exactly. At every single step of the way. In the United States, we exaggerate everything, kind of like we take it to the empower. And in Latin America, it's very simple. They don't try to get like the LGBT community. They just go to neighborhoods and say, hey, quietly. And this is the interesting thing. That's why for you guys, Americans are incredibly ideologically minded, and that's kind of good, by the way, because it's kind of fun. But don't use that when you try to understand Latin American politics. Guys that were super far left. I have a commie friend that voted for Javier Milei. Fallout Stalinist. You're not gonna believe why, because he thinks the whole thing's gonna collapse, and then everyone's gonna want to be they want like a Stalinist dictator to come along. I'm not. This is since it's so socially and friendly. Here in South Texas, when I go to church, like I'm an elder in my church, I'm not joking. 75% of the elders are a bunch of white dudes that marry Mexicans, and they were completely surprised that his wife's family would call them up and tell them, "Hey, there's elections. Who do we vote for?" The whole family, because someone they trust Hey, can you tell us who do we vote for? And it gives the name. Oh, just do this one. Okay. And the whole family goes to vote. And they just vote for whomever they trust, because because it's like a social thing. It's not a political thing. Because we're like this, we will vote for this guy. Next time another party comes along, we will vote, because there's no ideology behind it. And that's something that Milei understood. He didn't emphasize too much libertarianism per se. Oh, this one, you guys are gonna love this one. For some reason, which Argentinians are fantastic when it comes to Twitter and social media.
They're brilliant.
Oh, okay. This one is good for the ones that are very conservative like me. Well, just so you know, I'm a libertarian politically, anarcho-capitalist, actually, ideally, kind of like Javier Milei. But culturally speaking, I'm very conservative. Northern Mexico, South Texas, it's super conservative when it comes to culture, right?
Yeah. Well, that's I mean, Mexico, especially because of the high rate of Catholicism. Very traditional. Yeah.
You actually, my dad, who would be a little bit odd because he wasn't like he wasn't religious or anything like that. He would still have a struck hierarchy of saying, no, males do this, females do that. Like it's just, and he was considered kind of like a progressive per se because of his personality. But it was still very like those things were super strict.
Right.
So his story is so good. It's gonna take longer, but pay attention because it's just fantastic. This is one of the best stories of Milei. Long story short, he's Milei's on TV for like 2 or 3 years, just literally trashing the government, trashing some of the people that he put in his cabinet right now, but he's working because he's telling them what to do.
Yeah.
You see, and that changed everything because he says, I need people of the know-how, even if I hate them with all my heart, but I'm going to tell them what to do, and they have to obey, and that's what they're doing right now. So long story, he's just scrapping day to day. So the president and vice president, sometime the lady that was before Christina Kirchner, that's the name of the lady. Yeah. At some point, she got tired, and in public, together with other guys, I'm simplifying this, she said, "Oh, you guys are just talking." And everybody knew that she was talking about Milei, right? You guys are just talking and talking and talking, but you have never done anything in your life. Because he was never in politics. He was just like he was just a media personality, right? Remember, he was a goalie when he was young. He was actually going to be a professional. He was a singer. He was an actor. He was a sex tantrum teacher. So the lady, no, it's amazing, right? I was telling this story with Bob Murphy, one of my closest friends in the United States, and you guys from an economist from the Mises Institute. And everyone was making jokes that we're both very conservative, right? But I was telling this story about sex tantric. He was, on top of that, of everything you say, he was a tantric sex teacher. And it was because I laugh, and since Bob is very conservative, he was like, and then all over Twitter, everyone was making jokes like, look, he just couldn't laugh, even though he wanted, because those type of topics are kind of like, most Americans are like, they're conservative, they're like, what the heck? Okay, so he does all that, right? But he was never in politics. So the Christina Kirchner and some of the other guys said, oh, just shut up. You never done anything in life. Why don't you make your own party and try to win an election? And then he wins. And people tell him, oh, no, it doesn't matter. Because the first time he won, it was of the whole Congress, he got 2 House representatives, him and another guy. That was his entire party.
Wow.
And then people were saying like, it doesn't mean it. Yeah, you won, but it's nothing. And then he quotes the Bible, and he says, "It's not the amount of soldiers that you have that is going to give you the victory, but the forces that come from heaven."
Yep.
And guess what? And in less than a second, it became a meme, the forces of heaven. And then, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, because I'm not even all that familiar. You guys
know his roots in Judaism, right?
Yeah, he's mixed. He quotes the New Testament, the Old Testament. He's super mixed. He's a Catholic, but he has read a lot of the, how to say?
He's converting to Judaism, I believe.
I think he's gonna convert after, like officially or whatever. But he likes that. He does study with them a lot. I don't think the conversion has been official or something. That's a good way. I don't think it's official yet. And he said, oh, when I retire, I'm gonna be studying, how to say? I'm gonna study more in depth the Old Testament from the Jewish standpoint. So he quotes the Bible. It becomes a meme in 5 seconds, and then this is what I want you guys to understand. Are you guys familiar with Goku? Because that's a big thing in Latin America.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Dragon Ball Z.
Exactly. Okay, just so you guys know that. I'm a nerd and a yuck. That's how you call it, right? Yuck. I always hated the fact that, oh, you could be a nerd, but you couldn't play sports, or you could play sports, but you couldn't be a nerd. And I was like, no, I want to be, because I used to play American football all my life. And on top of that, I was a super nerd because I was always reading books since I was a little kid. And I said, no, I'm going to be the one that is going to be a nerd. And it's also going to be, how to say, an athlete, right? And so I didn't have time for Dragon Ball Z and all that kind of. I almost watched no TV when I was a kid because I was just so busy reading, being a nerd and being an athlete, right? So I don't even even I don't understand completely. But Dragon Ball Z is like a big thing to the point. And this is, look for it, guys, because it's so hilarious. They're like this place where there's like prostitutes and whatever in Latin America, and everyone's getting drunk and whatever. And I'm not joking. For some reason, they put Dragon Ball Z just a couple of years, and the prostitutes and the drunk and the drunkards, everyone got quiet. You're talking about people in their 30s turn around.
That's crazy.
And they literally just stare at how to say, at the show, and they don't do anything. Just in the in a nightclub with a bunch of prostitutes and whatever. Everyone, prostitutes, drunkards, everyone that was there was just sitting down watching it. An absolute, well, so it's like a big thing. Guess what?
Yeah.
We need to use it for the libertarian purpose. The libertarians online started making memes where Dragon Ball Z or Goku or whatever, Goku, you probably help me with that. Goku says
Goku.
Every single time they would find someone, usually an important person. I did this with with the guy from Amazon, Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
And what they would do is they got the forces of heaven, right? And then they get Goku, and every time someone important in Argentina would agree with Milei in anything, it didn't have to be like a big thing. All libertarians would, there you go. There you go. And as soon as someone would agree with Milei on anything, it didn't have to be like a big, even if it was food or whatever, right? They would have Goku with a little line, "Welcome to the forces of heaven."
Yes.
So the libertarian movement became not really libertarian, but it became the forces of heaven. And now everyone's talking about privatizing everything and lowering taxes. What's the label for that? Not libertarianism, but what? The forces of heaven. And who's saying that? Goku.
Yeah.
This is the marketing that is necessary to get regular people to go with you.
Well, and it's so funny you brought that up, because that's actually how I became kind of entrenched in the whole Argentine political landscape. Is there was that trend that was going around for a while that was only taking selfies like Javier Milei from now on. And so I posted that, and then all of a sudden I started getting the,
it has to be this way because it has to be lined.
Yeah, the welcome to the forces of heaven. I got that, and then this one, the true verified by a Miller intellectual.
Miller, I love that one.
Those kinds of things were how they engaged with me, an American from the outside.
Yeah,
and it made it so much easier to question it. Like I had to message some of the guys that I'm friends with from down there now and be like, hey, what does this mean? Like, what is this meme supposed to be? They had to explain it to me, but that's how
they're happy to explain stuff
from the outside.
Just so you know, Argentinians are very happy to explain you stuff. If you ask them something, they'll find 5 million ways to make you understand.
Well, and they are just, you talk about cultural difference. Well, you talk about a cultural difference. They are some of the most, they're some of the friendliest, just most loving people on the planet.
You might probably like this one that I found. Among Mexicans, I can be considered one of the most affectionate. Like, just my mom got me used to, like, the way I show love to people is by hugging and kissing. And
yes.
I like, usually Mexicans are like that, Latinos are like that. I'm well above average because my mom got me used to that, right? When I went to Argentina, it was like home. People were super affectionate. I think it was because of actually males kiss each other. How to say?
Yeah,
In
on
the
the
cheeks.
cheek.
And I don't. I mean, I remember I would do that with my uncles and my dad. Like sometimes, in certain circumstances, because I wanted to give them a hug, and I would give them like a peck. But for them, it's say hello, like in many cases, right? And I noticed something that was really cool that I think Americans are gonna find very interesting, because it helps you going little by little. Strangers are nice but distant. Like they respect your space a lot. Once they become your friends, you're gonna have no personal space. So it's kind of like just be ready. It's kind of like, but it allows you, because you're getting in and you don't have, like, let's say sometimes you go to certain Latin American places, and then whether you're a stranger or not, everyone's like, and they're asking you questions. No, Argentines are like, if they don't know you, they respect your space and all that. Once you become their friends, forget about it. There's no such a thing as actually, this is the hilarious one. My family, I never had in my life personal space. Once when I was young, I started dating an Anglo, actually, like an Anglo girl. And then she was talking about personal space. And I was like, what do you mean by that? Oh, yeah, no, personal space.
What is that?
Yeah, no, like, and you see, I'm an American still, but South Texas is not, it's pretty much culturally Mexico, right? Never in my life did I hear, like, just be ready, guys. Latin Americans don't have any notion of what personal space is. And I think some of my friends from some of the economists are Latinos also living in the United States. Daniel, actually, he was saying, oh, President Trump's going to have to get used to the affectioning of Latinos, because Javier Milei comes along and he just comes and hugs you and whatever, and you see Trump going like, wait, what's going on with this? Hey guys, exactly, just get used to it.
That's how it is.
That's the way it goes. It is. If they feel close to you, either strangers, they respect. Either if they feel close to you, forget about it. But you get a lot of benefits, so you can't complain. You really can't complain. So the reflection, as you said it. Exactly, that they're fantastic. But think about the balance that I found very interesting. Strangers respect you and keep their distance and give you space, but your friends are like super affectionate, to the point that I'm very affectionate, even by Latin American standards. I felt just right at home. Like, when I go over there, I just feel right at home. So all of these things add up to a very intense. Think about all the things that we're saying: affectionate people, very smart when it comes to marketing, very high skills. And I think some of my friends were saying, look, I forgot how they call it, because I always get confused. When you change images, Photoshop, their Photoshop skills are beyond belief. Like, I don't know, like babies, they would actually put in before the AI stuff and whatever, they were so skillful for the memes that they would put Trump and Javier Milei's faces fitting perfectly on the bodies of babies or something like that, that you couldn't even say like, no. But we tend to say they have very high human capital, which means they have a high skills. They're super high skills, almost everybody. And because of the monetary policies, literally, every time you devalue a local currency, whether you like it or not, you're devaluing the work of the people that live in that country. I hope it makes sense to everyone. That's why we will go to Argentina and we're like, dude, I'm paying $3 for a taxi. How to say? No, not even $3, like $250 for a taxi drive that here will cost you $20-30 easily. Or the food, the meat, much more higher quality than what I eat in the United States. And the price was like, I'm kidding you not, like it was this, eating 4 people, we ate for $17, and the highest quality meat that you can imagine. Right now it's more expensive, but it's still worth it. We will talk about it. But this is the issue. Since they don't devalue anymore, the resources are staying home. When the resources staying home instead of foreigners enjoying it, guess what? Argentines are the one. Because I could have $17 for 4 or 5 people to have a great time. Argentines didn't have that. I did not know. When I was trying to make sense how much they made in dollar terms, this story is fantastic. Some of the expats, that's why it's actually so easy, because it's very friendly for expats to move to Argentina. They were telling us this story back before Milei. Some lady was helping a guy from Australia or New Zealand, one of those places, and he's a trader, so he can do everything from Buenos Aires without a problem and enjoying the cheap cost of living for himself. And he hired a cleaning lady, and one of the greatest stories ever was this lady was saying, can you please asking her, can you please let me clean your apartment? I need a job. And what you think about people asking you for a job, right? And she said, And then my friend said, yeah, sure. Like, actually, I do need somebody. Thank you very much. How much are you going to charge me? He didn't know the prices, so he freaked out. So, well, I think it was like a 2-story apartment or something like that. $5. Cleaning, yes, $5. He said, I think he nearly paid her more. And the lady was this, go ahead and clean it, but I'm not going to pay you $5. I'm going to pay you a lot more than that. His cultural shock was great. Now they're charging more, which is great. But little by little, that's why we talk about like real wages in Argentina going up. It's just the transition was very heavy. That's the trick.
Yeah.
The people wanted the solution. He got in December and they wanted the solution by March. Yeah. If you ask me, guys, I never seen this in history. And a lot of my lefty friends have been saying, wait, this is wrong. This has never been seen in history. And I said, yes, that's what I'm telling you. And I knew it because my own theory of inflation has to do with bureaucrats. As Milei gets rid of bureaucrats and bureaucrats find jobs in the private sector, guess what? There's more production. There's less money. There's less money. The money supply is stable. Guess what's going to happen? Guys, the contraction was from January to April. I thought the contraction was going to be 1 or 2 years. The contraction was into April. From April until now, Argentina has not stopped growing in output in production of goods and services. And the way we knew it, even before we got the data, it was we were looking at wages that were coming down in purchasing power. Obviously, we're in a recession. And as soon as they started going up, we're like, dude, we're in a recovery already. And then we get the data. By April, we were actually recovering. I honestly thought it was going to be, I think I said it was going to be 1 year. I thought that the recovery was going to be right now. I thought all of 2024 was going to be contraction. And then in January, things were going to get better. Milei had actually told people, hey guys, be ready. It's more than likely we're going to have a contraction for about 2 years. He was actually giving people the space. It lasted a couple of months. That's why poverty collapsed real quickly, because the recovery came out right away. One of the reasons is because guess what? He started being more friendly with their exporters. Who are the exporters? Farmers and ranchers.
Yes.
There's a lot of resources coming in, and it's a lot easier for people to move from one place to another because there's more resources coming in. And and I was trying to tell some people that have a hard time with this one. I call it the real tax. We tend to have monetary, we call it nominal. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term. And then the real side, if you want to see it this way, if you go buy something, let's say a combo or whatever, you pay $15 for the combo, and then you get your burger, right? Okay, the nominal is the $15. The real is the hamburger, right? Okay, this is the same with taxes. There are taxes that are kind of like real and nominal. Taxes, you pay money, that's a nominal thing. But what about regulations? Regulations are a tax. They're taking away your time. Unless you think time is not a resource, which that would just make you an insane human being, saving you time, it's already saving taxes. That's why you're going to have a recovery. Yeah, we're still paying certain high amount of taxes when it comes to the nominal terms, but now I have a lot more freedom to produce whatever the heck that I want. I have less paperwork. I have now my customers, strangely enough, I have more people coming and wanting to work with me. Oh, people that used to work for the government now actually can actually increase production because I have more people that want to work with me. I have much less paperwork to do than before. Those are the ones those are regulations, are real taxes, and typical taxes. I don't know how the income taxes, for example, those are nominal taxes because one taxes your time and resources. Regulations do that whether we like it or not. You know that, like, whenever a government agent wants to screw you, they don't tax you. They just give you more regulations. As long as they give you more paperwork, they drown you, and then you can't do anything about it. What is it they want you to do? They want you to do less of it, not more of it, without touching your money. That's why it's so perversive, because, hey, no, I'm not touching your money, so you can't complain. No, yes, I can complain because you're taking away my time. Money is not the only day 1 or day 2 in my classes. Is money the only resource? No. So let's look at the other resources: time, attention. They're taking away your attention from solving problems in your business. Instead, you have to be doing paperwork. Those are real resources that people don't talk about it, because usually we're discussing monetary flows, which obviously monetary flows are important, right? But
Right.
attention, I think one of the things that why we have to be careful with reels and TikTok and all that kind of stuff, it quite literally taxes your attention. It takes away your attention. We have to be careful with it. There you go.
So to bring up, this is what you were talking about when you say the increase of production. So for those of you that are watching on video, not on audio, this was the economic output for Argentina prior, or I believe at the beginning of Milei's term.
Yeah, there you go.
So, obviously it is in Spanish, so the English
No, I
speaking
can
audience
translate.
will not understand it. But you see all the red, right?
Yes.
So go actually, go ahead and explain this to them.
Okay, cool. If I understand correctly, is month to month, for example, industrial production in January 24th collapse 1.3 in 1 month from the beginning of January to the end of January.
And
Then
that's just in the industrial side, right?
that's in the very first one on top.
Yep.
Then auto production in February 24th, there was a collapse of 4.7%. You see, remember, we're talking about January, February. Oh, wait, March and April. Okay, cool. The first 4 months were a contraction. So we're still in the contraction. We're not in the recovery yet. The cool ones are all the ways in the bottom when you start looking at. Oh, okay. This is just beginning of the year. Okay, cool. So at the beginning of the year, for example, there's one that says viajes. Can you zoom it in a little bit? Viajes Soro. I don't know what Soro is. Soro. You actually had it. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, and I don't know what subte. Yeah, I don't know what subte. But the point is, in December there was a collapse of 8%. That's why you have it in red. For example, exports of FOB. I don't remember what an FOB means, but I think that's the one that is exports of agricultural products, if I'm correct. And as you can see it, those are the ones that quickly, because what a lot of people complaining right now is that certain sectors like agricultural and farming. Yeah, farm ranch, right? Wait, farming and how do you call when it's cattle ranch? Cattle for cattle. I always forget the label. One thing is agriculture. The other one is what for animals when you're raising cattle. Well, raising cattle. Let's say raising cattle and agriculture. Those are the ones. People are complaining that it's noticeable that the sectors that grew the most were, and this is an economic. How to say, this is one of the best economic lessons you guys are going to have to get, and that's very American, by the way. So we have farmers and we have cattle ranchers. Is in the recovery, everyone's complaining, wait, not all the industries are recovering the same. If you take away agriculture and cattle ranching, we really don't have a recovery. And I'm like, guys, that's exactly how it works. When an economy is recovering, is healing. The most productive sectors are going to grow really fast, and that's what you want to do. Since they're so productive, you want the resources to go to those ones first, and then the rest of the sectors learn by trial and error how to serve those sectors. In the United States, we're great. Let me break it to everyone. Is because whether finance people want to accept it or not, whether tech people want to accept it or not, we are already wired to serve the agricultural and cattle ranching sector in the United States. And to be fair, the oil sector too, because we became #1 producers of the world, thanks to allowing technology and allowing people to actually go in and out. Right. So what you guys are going to see people complain, it's not all the sectors. No, it's because that's the way it is. The other sectors are going to have to rewire themselves, because before, what was it? You have a very high productive sector such as ranching and ranching and agriculture, and everyone was living out of through the government taxing them. Every other sector was living out of them through the government. Today, what is it? The government steps out. Now you have to actually serve them in their productivity increases. So your productivity increases have to be done in order to serve those ones. So as you guys can see, all of the red ones think about this, iron steel production. I didn't even know that they were good, but the whole point is steel production was always lagging behind. They're very productive, but guess what? Taxing and regulation was pushing them behind. And that's the way, those red ones, those are the sectors, the ones that you see in, I'm sorry, red ones, the green ones, steel production,
Now, steel production is the producción de acero, right?
De acero, yeah. If you zoom in real quick, now I can actually see vacuna. Vacuna means beef. There you go. That one. Can you see it? You see it's in green, right? Look at the green one.
Yeah.
Is faena vacuna, which means is the beef sector. Guess what? The beef sector is super productive. Every other sector has to rewire themselves in order to serve that that sector, and that's what you're seeing.
Yeah.
All of the red ones are still learning today. Back in the days, by the way, and even today, they're learning how to serve those those sectors. Electricity consumption, there was a big decrease. How come? Well, because the cattle sector, the agricultural sector are growing, and the other industries are trying to figure out how to serve those sectors. What happens to electricity consumption is going to go down because those sectors, as they're learning how to serve the productive sectors, they're going to use less electricity for a while. That's it. There's literally nothing we can do, and it's actually healthy. It's very healthy, the fact that all those negatives are barely learning. Those negatives means they're decreasing. Doesn't mean they went to zero. They're still working.
One thing I want to highlight before we go to the next
data set.
Yeah, next data set is this one here, the imports. Okay, this is super important because part of the problem that Argentina had was their import sector. No one wanted to import into Argentina. The money just was not there. So this was, this ranges from November of 23 to February of 24. So this is,
early
prior to Milei taking office.
No. It is actually once he's already in power, because it's January 24th. Okay. But it's the beginning. You see, November 23rd, he wasn't in power. That one, empleo formal, pero private formal employment, that's November 23. And you could actually expect that one to be kind of lowish, because this one truly was right before Milei came on, and they were in a recession since mid-year before. So it wasn't even like a Milei doing kind of thing. Look how much is collapsing. Dude, the recession started before him, like in the middle, like literally. So this negative, the fact that you have a couple of positives, that's the sign that the economy was already rewiring positively, because the entire economy was collapsing since way before. So the way before.
Well, and so some of that, I believe, would be just anticipation, knowing the kind of policies that were being proposed. Exactly. It's essentially like futures when you're looking at a market.
Exactly.
And so with this next data set, this is going to go from August to all the way to October in certain parts of the data.
Robert,
this is mind-blowing.
Can you give me 1 second? I need
to
take care of something. Give me 1 second, just real quick.
Absolutely.
I'm in my main cave.
No, right on. Okay, so this next data set is what is mind-blowing to me, because this is in less than a year's time.
Mm-hmm.
And so before we jump in, I'm going to show everybody again all of this red here. This was August to October.
Yeah, that's already.
Look at that. Look at the beauty in that.
Wow.
So this one, for some reason, it doesn't seem like it wants to let me zoom in.
But it's doable. Yeah. Production of chicken, like all the way on top: industrial production, auto production, steel production, chicken production, milk production.
Yep.
Then beef, estructuras casa. I'm not completely sure. My guess it has to do with housing production. Structures in the area of the capital, because it's so big. That's a sector in itself. So sometimes they actually separate because almost everything's centralized around around Buenos Aires and the surrounding areas. One of the big things is that, since on top of being the capital, political capital, is also the main port where things arrive. Everything in the same place. So sometimes they have to separate completely. But it's just the structures in the capital area, and that's another one. A lot of the states would actually take advantage, because everything was there in Buenos Aires, in the Buenos Aires area. You move in there, and whether you like it or not, you have control almost everything. I was telling you guys the story about the yerba mate. That be careful. You can use milk. Don't listen to Argentine friends that you're not supposed to put milk nor how to say nor sugar. You go ahead. When you start, you're supposed to do that. Later on,
Right.
you learn not to put it in. One of the very interesting things is that I tend to buy. There's one type of yerba mate, Canarias, with Messi. If you guys are familiar with Messi, officially is Uruguayan because it gets packed in Uruguay, but it is grown in Brazil. Is grown and stationed. They leave it for like 1 or 2 years or something like that. Then sent to Uruguay. They packed it in Uruguay, and they keep it there because one of the main products that they consume. But when they're gonna sell to Americans, they don't send it from Uruguay most of the time. They send it to Argentina first, and then from Argentina they sell everything. Why? Because everything that the structures of the Buenos Aires area are so good relative to a typical country in Latin America that it's better sometimes to send it over there, and then from there you actually sell all over the world. And in Austrian economics, what that means is that type of yerba is not really from Uruguay. It's a multinational product because it's grown in Brazil, stationed in Brazil, packaged in Uruguay, and traded in Argentina and bought in the United States. So the structures of the Buenos Aires area, they're super important for the entire region because on top of that is a port. On top of everything, on top of that is the main port of the nation. So it says estructuras cava means the structures in the capital area. Production of harina, if I'm correct, that will be like wheat production, already processed. Oil production, oil production went on. That's pretty cool. Production.
Yeah, so wheat and flour. Yeah,
wheat and flour. There you go. Like you guys know better than me. Cemento. I think you guys call it
cement or concrete.
Concrete. There you go. That's the word. I always have a hard time with concrete. I don't know why. Okay, just so you guys know, since my family is Mexican, in Mexico all the houses are made out of concrete. They're not made out of wood. So my brain, when thinks about that, it always is how to say thinks about block. That's how we call it. That's how the Mexicans call it. But yeah, there was cemento. There you go. Construction. I don't think construction. No. That's it. Honestly, since I haven't seen the how to say the sector by sector, I usually look at the top. I haven't seen the details. Yeah, there other sectors are slower because they take a big hit. But those positives you guys see already by September, which means the end of the year, that does mean that those sectors already figured out how to serve the most productive sectors that were already in recovery since the beginning of the year. The economy is quite literally healing so as to serve the most productive sectors, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Imports now finally they can import stuff. That's super good.
I would be interested to see a breakdown of that construction metric, because by this point, a lot of the housing restrictions, a lot of the rent controls and those sorts of things had started to kind of fall away. So I would be interested to see in that construction side of things, how much of that was industrial or commercial, and how much of that was housing. Because
I think it's this is actually pretty good because I think it's commercial. I think that one's pure commercial because that's true. We could actually divide it, but I think for the most part is commercial because the housing stuff, the main area is the Buenos Aires area, right?
Right.
And that one we didn't need any more, like a lot of new housing. There's some new houses, but not too much.
There was availability in Buenos Aires.
There was, but a lot of the houses were not put on the market because it was just not. Imagine the price controls were so bad that it was better to have it idle and pay taxes on it than to actually rent it out at that stupid price they were mandating. Just imagine how silly it is when they take away rent controls. Boom! You actually get a bunch of housing appearing out of nowhere that were empty. So that's why I think that's why housing construction is not a big thing. But the fact that you still have some construction does mean that the commercial sector is actually it's recovering very strongly. Yeah. This is such a good detail. Such a good details. Confianza del consumidor. The one in the bottom usually make jokes is confianza del consumidor, which means people are looking forward to a better to a better future, and this is just fantastic.
Yeah.
And trust in the government. The guys, look at the bottom. I'm gonna actually have to go look at the history of this, because I don't think this ever happened. Just imagine, how are you gonna trust the government in Argentina? Nobody in their right mind would ever trust, unless they were like paid to trust. By the way, the paid is not strange. You guys know why. One of the reasons why soccer and media and culture and politics are so connected is because there's a thing that is called ensobrados. Ensobrado means that politicians straight out in an envelope put money on a journalist, put it in their house or whatever, like some secret place, and then next time they come out on TV, they start talking positively about certain politicians, about certain measures, and you see, politics corrupts the private sector. Mm-hmm. Guess what they will start doing? When certain teams wanted to sell certain players at a high price, they would put money on an envelope, drop it in someone's house. Next day in the morning in the soccer talk show, they will start talking positively about that player, that the guys. Yeah, you see, government corruption does in fact permeates throughout the entire society and culture, and you start learning that the way that you have to do business in order to get ahead is to actually do those kinds of tricks with the media, having to pay money here, having to pay money there, quietly, so on and so forth. Now there's trust in the government because now they're changing the culture. By the government just saying, guys, you're on your own, create your own culture, create your own families, develop you develop your businesses. Now you're learning, wait, we don't have to be corrupt to grow. Who would have ever figured out that one out?
Well, and what's really mind-blowing about that last figure, that confidence in the government, is that you have to realize that for those watching that aren't familiar, 50% of Argentines were living in poverty. 60% of children in Argentina were already living in poverty. And when Milei came in, he gave them a little bit of a boost and helped them for the first quarter. And then from there, those protections started being rolled back. So these massive austerity measures were in the short term directly affecting people that were already poor and were already struggling. And despite that, there is more confidence in their government now.
Precisely because this is the issue. Just imagine that you have government bureaucrats and intermediaries controlling your life. It doesn't matter whether you're poor or middle class, you hate it because you're always dependent upon what those guys do, and they control your income one way or another, and they end up controlling your family, your decisions. Like this is serious issues. That the governments used to be, by all measurements, a big mafia. That's what everyone has to understand. And the way that the same things that mafia, the cartels, I know that in northern Mexico, they used to like the same thing. They go get some young people and say, hey, look, I just want you to come once a day, 5 o'clock, and tell me what you saw the rest of it. Your job is just to be in a corner, halcones they used to call them, just to be in a corner chatting with your friends. And if you see something suspicious, call me. And at the end of the day, just come and tell me what you saw the rest of the day.
That's narco intelligence is what that is.
Of course, halcones. Guess what? Former governments used to do the same thing. Hey, just be around here. Let us know what's going to happen because the election's coming, and such and such. Those are the same exact tricks that the former governments used to do. Just the fact that you don't have that, obviously people are going to trust the government. Oddly enough, it feels so weird to say like trust the government.
We call them pollsters here in the United States, folks.
you actually trust them simply because now think about the stress that you go from having this gigantic problem of having people controlling your life directly and indirectly, and now boom, you're free, go for it. What do? It's because it's more dangerous. The only thing that I would accept that it was somewhat problematic, but there's no way, and this is one big issue for the United States is going to end up being in the future, is it is true that the retirees, because the retirement programs were so badly made. For example, people that didn't put in money actually qualified because they kind of mix it with like welfare. Like they were mixing retirement benefits with welfare. Sometimes when you qualify for welfare, even if you didn't qualify for retirement, through qualifying through welfare, they would actually, one that is hilarious, guys, and they had to get rid of that for finally, is not just the fact it was hilarious because a lot of Argentines were saying exactly the same thing. They announced there were some trans people that were complaining about Milei just a couple of months ago because Milei cut off the welfare program to pay for their how do you call the hormones, the hormone therapy. The government had that program. Milei said we have to get rid of all this stuff, and in one of those ones, that was one of the ones that went away, and they were complaining. And the Argentines and the just regular libertarian Argentines, dude, we were paying for their hormones. They didn't even know that that kind of program existed. And then a friend told me that things were so weird that the welfare programs, as I told you, like sometimes instead of you don't qualify for this one, but through qualifying to 1, 2, 3 other ones, they would actually end up combined. Like they were all so interrelated because the rules were, one of the rules, if I remember correctly, some of the welfare, if you didn't have kids, would completely stop at 35. That was a rule they used to have back then. Okay. If and some people will have kids just so they could get welfare. But I mean, that's the United States.
I was gonna say we see that here every day.
Okay, well, but I think when it was 35, yeah, that's it. We're not. But if you identify as trans, you can have it all your life, even if you don't have kids. And there was this girl that went viral for saying, "Oh, I'm close to 35. Now I am trans," and the girl became like, started dressing like a guy, and she went viral for it. After I don't remember how many months, she comes out and says, "Guys, I faked it up. I faked it up so you guys can see how crazy things it is. Viva Milei." And then she comes out exactly, and then she comes out talking, telling his story in some of the libertarian podcasters and saying, "Guys, I wanted you guys to see this one." So that I'm a girl. Of course, I just faked the whole thing and don't worry. I wasn't really taking anything or whatever. Think about how silly it is. I'm 35, and I'm not gonna get any more welfare. But if you just say identify as whatever, one that is hilarious was they don't know exactly how many black descendants are because they're all completely mixed. So since they don't know how to count them, you can identify as black if you want to. Back in the days, today they just got rid of it because they were like, exactly, that's the face. Yeah, we don't know how many black.
So interesting because it's less than 1% of the Argentine population that is anything other than white.
Well, and that's where you get super weird because in most people are Italians. Let's just think, okay, when we talk about Argentina, just think about an Italian that speaks Spanish and dresses like an English person. Like that's usually the typical example we give. And but I'm not sure exactly how the whole which percentages, because there were there was some mixtures going around, but there's some indigenous. But as you said, it's a very small, that the fact that they make a big deal of ethnicity one of the big issues is there's a lot of immigration from Bolivia, which is even poorer than when I figure it out, talking to some of the taxi drivers that were originally from Bolivia. And they usually, most people from Bolivia, they're descendants of them. Usually they cheer for the same soccer team, the popular one, Boca Juniors. So actually it's easy to talk to them because you know that they're Boca Juniors. And so the percentages are usually like weird because they're mostly European descendants, but you have a little bit of indigenous, which is very small, and then you have a large, I don't know what quantity, and they don't keep it as clear as possible, coming from Bolivia. So to say straight out, a very small population, maybe yes, I think you're correct, but there's a significant amount there that are mainly descendants from people from Bolivia, because things in Bolivia are even worse than in Argentina. Imagine how things are, that Argentina actually had a better living standard with all the inflation and all the problems and all that kind of stuff. Actually, they had much better living standards than people from Bolivia. They were just a little bit up north, and it was always like a big deal. But yeah,
wow,
the libertarian first anarcho-capitalist president of the world actually made Argentines like the government.
That's wild. No, I want to get your analysis on one thing here, because it was interesting to me to see a bit of a bit of a change, and I don't know if this is a backward slide. I'm not an economist, so I
Yeah.
want to get your opinion. So here, back in January,
Early.
you see the exports were, it looks like, at 9.4% month over month, 2.8%. I believe that's what year over year.
It's
And
probably
then
yes. Oh,
if you go
trimester over trimester,
oh,
quarter,
gotcha.
quarter. I think.
So, and then if you go later into Milei's presidency, you see the exports are actually down
because
4%, down to
because they
4%
shoot
month
up
over
during the
month.
year. It's a seasonal thing.
Okay,
They shoot up at the beginning of the year, and how to say, and they came down. Like, and that's what we're saying. Mainly the agricultural and cattle ranching sector grew like crazy. Now the other sectors are catching up. The cattle. Do you think about this? Is rates of change? They're not zero. It's just that at such a high level that if in the next period, next month or next quarter, you grow a lot, but not exactly at the same level, it looks like a negative. Well, that's a negative change. It doesn't mean that it went, how to say, it went down to zero. They're still producing like crazy. It's just that it actually, the other ones are growing and they're catching up, if you want to see it. What you're seeing right now is the other sectors catching up. And what is really happening is you guys can see this slowing down, not a contraction in the sense that you go to zero, but instead of growing, let's say you had 100, I'm going to make up something. You're at 200 units 1 month, the next month you're 199, or I'm sorry, 198, 99, or whatever. The other sectors are 20 and they're going to 30. So the growth is huge because they're catching up to the export. That's why the exports look like that. But guess what? That mainly has to do with the fact that they expanded a lot at the beginning of the year, and the other sectors are catching. There's such a high. Think about it, in the United States, we look at China's rates, 7% growth. Well, yeah, because they're like 20. If you grow one, that's already a gigantic, how to say, a 1 unit, that's a gigantic growth. In the United States, let's say we're at 100 and you grow two units, that's more than what China grew, but percentage wise is very small because we're so big already. So when people say like, oh, it's so mediocre, like 1.8 growth, I said, dude, you understand what 1.8 growth per person means for a wealthy American? If just next year you're like 1.8 better off on goods and services. For an American, we don't notice it that much because we're so big. But that 1.3, that's like, I'm gonna make up something like $1,000, $2,000 extra of your income. Give that money, yeah, because our income's already so high. Give that money to a Mexican or to an Argentine, to a Chinese person. That's like 50% growth. So a 2% growth for us that looks bad is like 10, 20% growth anywhere else. And that's what you're going to see. The Europeans are super slow. We continue to grow. Even within, think about these guys, even with the high inflation we had, 9% or whatever, we're still growing. No matter what. It's just we don't like the fact that cost of living is through the roof. But we're still producing goods and services, and the farmers and cattle ranchers are listening to us. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're not producing zero. You're producing a lot. It's just that the cost of your inputs are huge, and you're having to go through the stress. I was telling some of my economist friends, like, guys, my economist friends my colleagues were complaining like, oh, people are so irrational. The economy is doing good. I said, yes, production and employment are good. Everyone has a job, but everyone has to rewire their brain to the new cost of production, and that's not easy at all. Think about like the typical example I give my kids is, maybe I'm making more money right now than before the pandemic, but when I try to pay attention to it, like the typical, my best example is going to a Chinese buffet. Let's say back in the days I used to spend $10 with a drink, and it took about 5 years to go from 10 to 11, because inflation was like 2% a year. It's so small that we don't notice it to 11. When it got to 11, I was like, that's fine. After like 5 years going very often, who cares? Well, from pre-pandemic to 2021, 2022,
it's like $17 now.
Thank you, 17 or whatever. And then now I have to do my brain is like, wait, is it really worth it? Because obviously, it's not a necessity, right? And in the meantime that I'm wasting my time and attention, remember how it's a tax on time and attention. Is it really worth it? And I don't have the time to figure it out whether it's worth or not. I'm not gonna go. and I have to
Right.
go and find substitutes. And maybe some of the things that I would do, for example, when I had a lot of job, I don't know if you people, when I was a student, I used to do this. Finals week or whatever, I would go to the Chinese places and I would stay there all day since the
Yeah.
morning. It's early spot, and I was studying, and you have drinks and you have food, and they were like, "Oh, that's perfectly fine." Or what? I got used to do that, right? Now I'm not sure that it's worth it. Like when I have a lot of job, let's say a lot of work on a Saturday, and I want to take the Saturday off just to focus on work, just to get ahead.
Yeah.
And I used to stay there all the. I'm not totally sure that that's the correct thing to do. And if you ask me, the
Right.
substitute that I have found, they're a pain, and that pain is not monetary.
Yeah.
But it takes away time and attention. It's time and attention. Forget about your business. Time and attention you don't give to your parents. You don't give to your kids. You don't give to your family. Why? Because wait, hold on, honey. I need to figure out whether it's even actually worth it relative to my new income. Yes, I'm making more money, but so it is. Now think about this, guys. What we're going through it. This is lifestyle in Argentina before Milei. Lifestyle. The fact. Just imagine this is life. I'm not talking about an economic phenomenon. No, lifestyle. When some of the companies were able to actually take the risk of fixing a price for 2 or 3 months, like actually put it on the how to say, on the plastic, not like a little label that you can take out and back and forth. Actually put it on, but actually put it on the how to say, on the
marketing,
on the and the container itself. This is the price.
Yeah.
Here in the United States, sometimes we see it. When they finally
see it with Arizona tea.
What?
Arizona tea, the cans.
Yes, but that one. In Argentina, that never in history has anything like that happen. Until today. I think some of the ice cream that is, by the way, if you guys ever go to Argentina, you have to get ice cream. You have to. It's the best ice cream you're going to get in life. Some of the ice cream, finally, we're able to actually, like the Arizona tea, that's a very good example. Never seen before. What does that do? Those final goods, I hope this makes sense. So the farmers know that their input prices and the price that they sell, they fluctuate a lot. We call it because farmers are in a very early stage of production. So there's a lot of volatility in prices and quantities, right? Well, prices mainly. In the final stages, which is when you get to retail, right? If you guys notice, from week to week and month to month, the prices are very stable, to the point that Arizona tea kind of thing is not just that they have a stable price. They actually put it on the can itself, which is unheard of in Argentina. And they're taking the risk. If something goes wrong, cost of production goes up, I'm going to absorb it. But if cost of production goes down, I'm going to get the big, I'm going to get the big profit. For my customers, it's worth it, because no matter what, you always knew. If you have $1, what can you get? Arizona tea. Yeah, you see, there's a relationship with your customers that they already know that for months and months and months, years and years and years, no matter what, you get $1, you can go get Arizona tea. That was unheard of in Argentina. Today, thanks to the Milei policies. And a lot of people say, this is kind of trivial. No, dude, this is people's daily lives. Sometimes you're actually going to go out with your friends and just have ice cream on the park. Imagine having to say, well, I don't know what the price is going to be. I don't know if I'm going to have enough, because I don't have. Today, after 2-3 months, you can actually plan hanging out with your friends, just eating ice cream, because you know that the price is going to be predictable. For a lot of people, think this is trivial, because maybe in their lives, they want to be talking about Marx, and they want to be talking about Keynesianism, and they want to be talking about. Regular people don't want to do that. They want to hang out with their friends, have predictable prices, so they can long-term planning. And that was the key that I think Milei got to the people, and the people behind them, right? Is got to regular people to say, look, the government is printing the money. You have to work for it. They don't have to work for it. They just actually print it out. They're taking away the resources from you, and that's why they're more expensive. They're not telling you they're taking it away from you, but through monetary policy, they're actually taking away by pushing up prices. When people started getting that one, like, and the cool thing is you can compare it to Uruguay. In Uruguay, they're somewhat responsible. Left or right, their governments have always been fairly decent. So you see what happens in Uruguay. Look at the money supply, very stable. Look at the money supply over here, not stable at all. People started getting it. Now, and this one for the nerds. There's one for the nerds, guys. One of the moments where I went to brag about how Latino Austrians we were and libertarians we were at top of the world was when Milei wasn't all that well known internationally, but among the libertarian groups, we started sharing in Spanish, not in English, Millei's speech in one of his, I forgot, like campaign trails. I think that's how you call it, campaign trails.
Yeah.
He was talking about, like, the great Argent. He was talking about libertarians, and over there they call it classical liberals, Alberti, like Argentines, and even those great libertarians and Austrian economists that we still learn from them, even though they're not Argentines. And they started mentioning Menger, Hayek, Mises, Bombaverk. That's the weirdest name.
Rothbard.
Yeah. But it was like, dude, this guy's in a campaign trail actually mentioning monetary policy, explaining it, and talking about our authors that we like. And then on top of that, don't tell anyone, because actually this happened. I literally turned one tear a little bit when someone sent me a video of a campaign trail when he's talking about money policy and whatever they're talking about. Then the speech stops, and then they actually follow a guy, a regular person, goes and buys a book from Hayek, because in the campaign trails people were selling books, the book libertarian books. A regular person, goes and buys a book from Hayek, goes to Milley and asks him to sign it. And when I was with Austin Peterson, I was telling them, guys, regardless of whether you like him or not, when you get regular people to go buy a book from Hayek, from Austrian Economics, and goes ask something you to sign it, then we can talk about accomplishments. Yeah. I'm not saying the guy is perfect, but that accomplishment is beyond, you cannot even measure it.
Well, part of the reason for that success too was the fact that Milei was not just giving speeches. He was doing stage shows. He was inviting people to come see a play, and you'd come away with it with new knowledge. You would get entertainment out of it. It was successful.
Did you remember, like, how to say, when he was he did a
piñata?
La piñata, there you go, la piñata. Yeah, that one. Beating up the central bank. We're gonna kill inflation if we kill the central bank. Now, who in the right mind? Well, who did that in the United States? Not Ron Paul was amazing, but even those kind of histrionics that draw people's attention, regular people, he didn't do them, and that's fine because that's not his personality, obviously, right? But think about it. You have to do those kind of things to draw attention, so that at least, remember when I told you that when my students, I give them some wild story about my dad, I get their attention, and then when they don't notice, I just put in all the economic theory. You have to draw attention one way or another. You have to do it because most people, as I told you, are not interested they're not even interested in business. Even people that are entrepreneurs are actually kind of lonely. One of my favorite ones that I love when farmers complain, because I understand their pain. When city people start talking about producing food as if it was the easiest thing in the world. Oh, we should just in my backyard, I'm gonna grow this stuff, and then farmers are like, dude, do you understand what it goes through in this kind? We're discussing that kind of thing, like so some of the right wingers, like the bitter right and the resentment right. Oh, this Costco, I think it was the one that we're complaining about, like these big stores are trying to mimic simulacra of an actual town with all of these all of the local stores or whatever. Wait, go tell farmers and ranchers that their wholesale buyers, wholesale clients are wrong, and we should close them down, because we should only have small stores in small towns. I'm sorry, but we don't live in that universe. That's it. No. Small towns where they're farmers, they're small because we need the space so that they can farm and they can have a bunch of animals going on. It's not just because it's nice. Obviously, it's nice. I love it. Right. But we need those space. And then people in the city have to rewire. Remember, they have to rewire their economic, whether they notice it or not, their economic activities in order to serve those highly productive industries that need space, time, attention, quietness. Farmers, we can't have this noise going back and forth. All those remember the monetary, financial, and real resources that are necessary to get an entire society going. A very large economy. These things are not so easy as people want to make them out to be. And going back to this issue, most people don't care about those things. We need to find ways to actually. I'm trying to reach out to the right, which I call the bitter right, just to talk, guys, it just doesn't work this way. Like, I understand it will be nice. 50s movie. I think the one that it will be like the perfect example, because I see some people usually reference Wonderful Life.
Yeah,
most right wingers want that life. If you ask me,
we're past that.
no,
That's
I
outdated.
want that. I want that. But the way that I seen it, that it works, and you see, we have to figure ways, right? What I seen it work in Mexico, because all the cartels, violence, and all that kind of stuff. What people started to do, it was going to even poor people. So this is not even like only with middle class. Everyone started moving to private gated communities, and all of the things that right wingers want, they're inside of that gated community, like that neighborhood. Some communities are super strict and no commercial life can happen. Other communities are not strict at all, and then you can sell tamales in one house, not even a store. In one house you can sell tamales and coffee in the other one, and then some other one, like the daily life that it's possible to do it. There's nothing, for example, this should tell you why that analysis of anti Costco, anti Sam's Club, the anti Costco right, I'm gonna call it the anti Costco right, is that in Mexico, and I seen it, I had to actually defend it with use Austrian Economics. Some of the young guys that follow me created this very nice, we call it the Hayekian triangle, how production is, time passes by, it starts going, remember, time is the medium of production. There was this gigantic complaint that, this is going to sound hilarious, guys, sorry, but this is just Latin America, okay? There was this big complaint that there were too many people reselling the Costco cakes, like the cakes they'll sell you at Costco.
Yeah.
They were buying a lot of them, like they were taking like 10, 20 or whatever, and they would take them to their communities, many of them low, low income communities, and resell them individually, right? And people were complaining, like, I tend to say, I love the middle class. I'm from the middle class, but all the problems in the world politics is not about the rich and the poor against the poor. It's about the middle class complaining about stuff. That's what politics is. Nobody wants to say that. It just so happens that the middle class tries to use the low income to try to get resources from the house. If you ask me, what was Marx? A high income or a middle classer or a low income person, working class person? It was middle class. And he was, and I don't think he did it like in an evil way. I think his brain found ways to unintentionally, if you ask me, a theory that would actually help him being the bureaucrat. Now that's why I said that I hate the bureaucrat. For me, bureaucrats are really, because it comes from there. The bureaucrats end up being the leaders of the lower classes. What ends up happening? The bureaucrats of the middle class end up using the ones on the bottom. So what was happening, this was the middle class was complaining that when they would go to Costco to buy cakes, the Costco cakes, the lines were long, people were taking too many, so on and so forth. And horrible, they were reselling them for a profit. Oh, that's so bad. And I was telling, like, guys, okay, don't you understand that that's part of the structure of production? You go buy wholesale and then you resell retail. I mean, that's it. This is not a magical thing that people, that's the way you make production. And people actually got after us saying, no, that's not true. That's not what those cakes are for. And I was telling them, guys, those type of stores like Costco and Sam's were literally created in Texas. At least it works this way. So the small businesses, this is a small business, goes and buys wholesale from them, goes and resells retail. Here, I know in Reynosa, which is when you just cross the border, the first Mexican city is Reynosa, and even here in the American side, that's what restaurants do. They go to Costco and Sam's, buy the most of the desserts are from there, and all they do, they separate them and sell them by pieces instead of the whole thing. Everyone that was complaining about the long lines never even figured out that this is just an entrepreneur trying to make money, and on making money, they were making resources that were not available before to lower income, because for lower income, they cannot go to lower income class. They cannot go to Costco. When I was a student, I couldn't go to Costco, and not even Sam's, because I was literally like low income, right? I just couldn't go. And they were reselling them and said, no, that's part of the structure of production. That's why these ones are so important. If you want a kind of like wonderful life little town, you can do it in your, change the rules of the cities so that
that setup that we used to have in small towns, you can have them in your neighborhood where people literally
Yes.
can open a shop. Just imagine if every neighborhood in any random city, people were allowed to open a shop right in their garage.
Well, perfect example. I mentioned, living in the area with a large Amish community.
There you go.
Well, what they do, something that they do a lot here, is that they will go and they'll go out to like a Walmart or a Costco or whatever, and they will go in and they'll tell the folks at Costco, give me all of your dented cans, anything that you wouldn't put on the shelves because you can't sell it at full value. Give us all of those. Tell us what you want for them. They pay for it, and then they take it out to their little neighborhood shops. Combine that with the baked goods and everything else that they're selling, and they're still selling those cans to rural communities at a fraction of the price of Walmart. But
Because
Walmart wasn't going to sell them anyway. So
exactly that you just said it right.
That's the nature of the economy.
Okay, there you go. Those and think about it. We're saving. It's not like we have to choose. Oh, it is the old times. That's never gonna. No. Those are structures. It's like, think about dad, mom, and kids. We're not getting rid of that. It's just that we have a different setting. That's it. I mean, we just have to kind of like work around it. Okay, those small towns that was really nice because everyone knew each other, whatever. Okay, why don't you try to imitate that in a neighborhood? I think in Houston it's allowed because they have very loose rules. How to say? I forgot how they call it, like
regulations.
Yeah, regulation, but there was a specific name for that. But you can construct whatever you want. That they don't put a lot of
zoning laws.
Zoning, yeah, the zoning. Because guys, I go to conservatives. Okay, you want that? Okay, you could actually and I'm not. I've seen it. I actually seen it in Mexico. You just get out, and one of the neighbors sells tamales in the morning, and another one sells coffee or whatever, and they do their shop. All you have to do, go to the city ordinance and says you have to actually reduce the zoning rules. I'm not saying get rid of all rules, obviously. And in Mexico, in the private city where the state doesn't get involved, some communities are very strict, no commercial activity. Some other ones are like whatever you want, right? And right now we can actually go to the city and say, guys, you have to let us actually open shop in our houses so that people can always have a job. But there was an author that was discussing that during the gold standard era, when people would go unemployed, the first thing they would do would go to the store, the wholesale stores, somewhat similar to Costco and Sam's. They will buy whatever was fashionable because of the season. Whatever was a seasonal item If you were unemployed, you will quickly go and buy, and sometimes you wouldn't even pay them money. You would then look, I'm going to try to resell it. Give me credit. They would just give you, let's say, imagine cakes, right? They give you a bunch of cakes on credit. You resell and you get the money, you pay it back, and you make it. And unemployed people used to actually survive that way. Just imagine that instead of unemployment benefits, what we would do is everyone can actually sell something outside of their house.
So, and here's a prime example of that. So this is actually a friend of mine. He's the mayor of a smaller town here in Western Pennsylvania called Slippery Rock. And this is something that he posted on his X page. He said, since taking office in 2018, we haven't raised our property taxes once, cut 70% of our public debt, and created a Republican majority. We reduced fees for businesses, revamped our code and zoning to be more inviting to entrepreneurs, helped walk new business owners through the processes of permitting, started new community events. Like, this is, I want people to understand, they haven't, for local governments, their main source of income is not income tax, it's property taxes. So if they have managed to not raise their property taxes and cut 70% of the public debt, how did they do that? They did that by doing exactly what you were just saying. They were revamping zoning laws. They gave businesses, they reduced the barrier to entry for new businesses. And through that, they have been able to cut 70% of the public debt.
Oh, and you know how we can call it the bureaucratic tax. Okay, sure, you're not taxing my money tax, but it's the bureaucratic tax. Any paperwork immediately pushes down entrepreneurs. Like, that's it. Just let's accept it.
This is JD here on the left. He is the mayor of Slippery Rock. So,
that's good management.
Yeah, he's done just that. And prior to taking office, it was a Democrat area, and now it's a Republican stronghold in that county because of what he's done.
You see, it's not ideological. Regular people are not ideological. They're not, oh,
Right.
no, he's a Republican. No. So look, I'm actually letting you open a shop here. I'm actually reducing your taxes so you can actually get, like, do you have anything against that? No. Does it matter that I'm a
No.
Republican or Democrat? No. Okay, they just go for it. That's it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not it's not a, you're inviting people to be active in their, because that's the issue that I had with the United States. And usually a lot of the people that couldn't, like Mexican family and friends that couldn't actually, they couldn't stay long in the United States, their complaint was that the setting was not inviting to social life,
Right.
mostly in the neighborhood. Just imagine, when I grew up, when I would go to Mexico, I would go to the house we had in Mexico. Oh, mom, can I go play with my friends? As I get out of the house, there were kids playing, playing soccer right in front of us, or a little bit down the street, and the girls were playing, the hula bullets, or I don't know how they call it, the
Hula hoops.
girls, yeah, those ones. And those, that was just, the streets were completely, where we used to use chalk to actually, I don't know how you call those games, actually I haven't done them in such a long time, but we would just draw on the street so that we could actually use them to play, sometimes just to play soccer, and we draw them, and sometimes to do the special plays where you actually like jump around and that kind of stuff.
Like hopscotch. Yeah.
Exactly. There you go. I have no clue how you call those things. And you could actually see that's the daily life that a lot of people that I know, the people that were able to, like, let's say middle class, that were like, yeah, you make more money over here, but the social life is terrible. And what was their complaint? When you go to any neighborhood in the United States, you don't have that kind of social life. Imagine if you could actually start doing things, just selling stuff. The fact that you get out and talk to your neighbors. Oh wait, I didn't know who you were. Or for example, someone very nice that was not in your on your street, but it was around the street, you never actually get to know. And you're like, oh, you sell those stuff? That's pretty cool. I never thought about that. That social cohesion is strong with all the zoning. And think about this. This is the kind of stuff happening in Argentina. Why? Because get rid of intermediaries. Hey guys, in your neighborhoods, go for it. We're not gonna stay on your way. Open businesses. We're not gonna stay on your way. Just imagine that people are like, thank you for staying out of our way. Just imagine with the situation in Argentina, that they're not thanking the new they like the new government for giving them money. They're thanking them for staying away from their lives, for just letting them go, because they were so suffocated.
Well, and another prime example of that too is here, when you talk about barriers to entry and things like that, you look at street vendors, right? Street vendors are big in Latin America. Here, they don't have that opportunity because the government focuses on, oh, well, this is public health, and you could get sick, and you could this and that. Well, why do I need the government to tell me that when the market will correct itself? Look, if you're selling, tamales on the street, and I go and I buy one and I get sick from that, I'm not going to stop and eat your freaking food anymore.
Entrepreneurs will fix that, specifically because they get the market signals. You messed up, you fall, you collapse. You better not mess up. In the government, if you messed up, what happens? Raise taxes, or borrow money. Yeah, that's exactly what I want to. Let's not say the market corrects itself. Entrepreneurs correct it, because if they don't, they get out of the market. And in Argentina, when people used to say that, say, no, wait, but look, it's the same exact businessman no matter what, and they hated businessmen in general, and says, because you're so close to international competition, these guys know that they can mess up all they want. They have the money to put up with the regulations, and they have enough connections. That's why they never lose. When we talk about deregulation, we're not talking about letting a bunch of rich guys do whatever. What we're talking about is letting literally the middle and lower classes, taking away all the real taxes, taking away the time and attention that it takes away from their family, friends, and business, all of the regulations, all the paperwork. Now you can compete, and you compete in the simplest. Like some of my friends that were leftists used to make jokes about someone say, yeah, if you want to compete against Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola in Mexico is like, it's next to the Virgen of Guadalupe, like those are the two most Mexican symbols ever. The simplest way that you compete against Coca-Cola, and I guess it's not so easy to see, is you start selling, flavor waters, aguas frescas. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Fruit flavor, usually fruit flavor outside of your house. Obviously, you're not gonna make the money that Coca-Cola does. But just because you sell that, some of your neighbors are going to buy from you, and they're going to end up buying less Coca-Cola. That everyone is complaining, and should, that is not healthy for Mexicans.
Yeah.
And guess what? Mexicans we have actually gained, in average, including myself, we have gained weight like never before since we opened up to trade. People are complaining about trade. So no. It's because the problem is that we don't allow any competition for healthier options. I rather complain. That's it. I rather complain about people being overweight than not having enough food. Okay. Now the new problem is that we're okay, but you need to allow for that kind of competition, and people still complaining. Like, remember the example about the Costco? The Costco case were like a meme for like 2 weeks in a row, and we're saying that's the competition you have. That's the competition you have to get so that poor society, like, instead of depending upon unemployment benefits, because right now that's getting into Mexico. It's kind of weird. Argentina is going the free market, and Mexico is going the Peronist way. Like, all the stuff that happened in Argentina before Milei, they're being applied to Mexico right now.
Because they elected a socialist president.
And his, I don't know if it was vice president or the capital, the governor of the capital, but it was the same exact party, and she won. And everybody knows she won because the other guy said, "Hey, this is the one." Those are the and right now, within time, the problem is that you cannot really compare Mexican economy to, because for many years, one way or another, Peru and Mexico have done really good monetary policy. So their inflation rates are always like, just to give you an example, in Argentina, 50% inflation a year was normal. Imagine that, right? Which meant 6% inflation in 1 month. 1 month was actually normal. You and I were complaining year-to-year inflation 9%. Yeah. Argentines, when they would see the inflation rate was only like 1 or 2% a month, they were like, "Hey, things are getting better. That's pretty good." Today, people are saying like, "Oh, look,
that's 12% a year."
Exactly. Imagine it was just company getting ahead. So there was a lot of stable currency. So that allows the new government of Mexico to try to apply all of the nonsense that was applied in Argentina before, because that's what we're afraid of. If Milei wins, and there's some, I send you some of those ones. Some of the anti-Milei people, things are getting so much better that they can complain that now the criticism is, well, if Milei fixes all the macroeconomic problems, but then now people are not going to vote for him because they have no reason to vote for him anymore. We were like, you're just running out of stuff to talk about, right? Like, it's just like, come on, guys. It's just the most like, they literally are trying to find, like, how do I literally, you can see, like, how do I complain? One of the reasons you guys know that the poverty issue came along, it was very strong. It was because they didn't have anything to complain but the poverty rate. I don't know if you knew that. And the official numbers were usually for poverty in Mexico, in Argentina, INDEC, that's the name of the official, were usually given once or twice a year because everybody knew that poverty existed. And this is interesting. 3 universities in private would keep the poverty rate numbers monthly. So the official government institution, INDEC, would not worry about that. Once or twice a year, we just grab those, that data, we do an average, and then we publish it. 1 or 2 reports a year, and that's it. So the last report, the only thing people were grabbing to was the poverty rate rising. The last report that people were actually using was in September, that it said it was 50 something or whatever. But that data came from from June. And the strong months of recovery were exactly July and August. That's when you actually see the economy not just recover, but shooting up. So in September and October and even November, people were using, hey, look, in September, the poverty rate was like 50%. They were saying, wait, that's completely wrong. First and foremost, that data is not even, you're talking about September, which things changed by now, November. And that data from September was a report that was using data from June and May. Things have completely changed. So we started making it public, including the Milei administration, saying, look, the 3 private sector data collectors, there were 3 universities, They keep it up a month. Just follow it. We're already in 38, 30 some, and you guys are using data from from mid-year. That's why everyone was crying about it. Say, "Oh, you're just manipulating the data." No, morons. The problem is that before Milei came along, whoever cared about keeping track and talking about the poverty rate in Argentina?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Because it's
Now
like, well, this is what it is. Yeah.
That's it. Now Milei comes along. Now everyone wants to be talking about the poverty rate in Argentina. And what was the official date of the government agency? It was always behind 6 months or whatever because nobody cared. Actually, sometimes I complain if you guys are complaining the U.S. government, you don't know what's happening in Latin America. I'm so spoiled as an American economist because I get federal data every month.
Yeah.
And I complain that when I give reporters local data, it always takes an extra month. So I'm usually behind 1.5 months when I'm talking about right now we're in January. The data that I have is from November, but a lot of reporters tell me like, "Oh, that's so behind." And inside of my head, I laugh because I know Argentina and Mexico. Sometimes we get, no. It was something like someone was talking about how great the current government of Mexico is doing because something happened on the arts. There was some data about the increase in art performances or whatever, but that was data from 2021.
Wow.
Because nobody cared about those topics, and they were just reported once in a while. And now, since society is so politicized, I mean, it's kind of good that we get the data up, but then political activists don't know how to use the data. They don't even check the dates. I mean, forget about using the data. They don't even check the dates. So now, if you ask me, I think this is the positive view that you guys are talking about Argentina. You guys are talking about topics I like.
Right.
Is that we're gonna end up pushing that for the data centers and the data and the data institution to keep track of all the data as if it was the United States. That we always try to keep it up on updated precisely so that we don't have this nonsense happening. So go for it.
Well, and it's really interesting to me that the discussion of Argentina is so mainstream now. It's wild because for a while there, now that it's become into the kind of come into the mainstream, a lot of my friends from Argentina will say that I'm one of the Yankee original because I was one of the I was one of the original Yankees that really kind of delved into that discussion as it became popular, shortly after Milei was elected.
Original gangster, how to say gringo? The original gringo, we call OG. That the case.
Yeah, and it was because I'm trying to think, that would have been in February of that would have been in, what was it? Yeah, February of 24. So not that long after Milei took office. And so it's been kind of crazy to me to see that, like, I was discussing it on my X feed for months on end, and then all of a sudden I start seeing more and more and more.
When did you start? When was the day that you started discussing it on your feed? Do you remember?
Would have been probably between January and February of 2024. Okay, so shortly after Milei took office.
Okay, yeah, because it was big, and we should actually be talking about this topic. So when he won, and we're like, we still have the little tears going along because we always play one of the main libertarian podcasters is called Tipito Enojado, and he has been with Milei since the beginning, like just pushing for Milei and very good at explaining like all this complicated stuff. He's absolutely fantastic. How to say about discussing them in like super
layman's terms.
But you see, this is what I find: the guy's telling you super deep realities in the simplest terms. I'm like, this guy's a genius of communication, right? Sadly, he doesn't speak all that much English, but the guy's just fantastic. One of the things that usually he was always careful with, hey guys, because this is very important for everybody, guys. The main push that put Milei in power were people that did not vote. Really? Kids through YouTube because they like his personality, they made Milei viral among the youth.
Yes.
And they like him a lot. And they went to their parents, semi-socialists, not just parents, but grandparents, and asked them, please vote for Milei. Do it for me. And the story is probably some of your friends have told you, where literally old-time parents, semi-socialists, whatever, saying, I'm going to vote for Milei. I don't like him, but this is the future our grandkids have chosen, and we have to respect that. It is when you hit the kids, I don't know if you actually saw the video where a bunch of kids, I don't know if it was like a school trip or whatever, they stopped the bus because they didn't want to just say hello to Milei. They wanted to actually hug him. The kids come down, go around Milei, and they start jumping for him. Milei, Milei. And I said, they're never going to forget that. We have a future. But you see, he reached out to people. He made things simple. He made things friendly. And on top of that, which is super good, he was very friendly with the people he wants to attract and very antagonistic about the people that he knew, hey, you're not going to vote for me.
Yeah.
Why am I going to be wasting my time? So he just, against the bureaucrats, again, the ones that you know that they're just involved in this just to have a job. Like, literally, all they want is a secure income. You know how many of those are, and you cannot even. You cannot even say the one that is. No, the one, and I didn't notice, but I forget. This comedian is pretty good about noticing these things. Oh my god, he's so good. A fat guy, Irish descent. Tim, he's super good. Tim something. I forgot his name. Oh my god, I used to listen to him a lot. Tim something.
Tim Dillon.
Yeah, that one. Tim Dillon. He was noticing that obviously the United States is a little bit different, right?
Right.
Hollywood stars would actually start becoming political activists when they didn't find a job. As soon as their job opportunities will come down, and say, how do I draw attention to myself? And they get involved super heavily. Well, a lot of people are like that. A lot of the political activists, for good or for evil, whatever you want to see it, they want a secure job. And I saw it in Mexico. A lot of people that were super, like Twitter, it was like a hiring. It was better. Indeed, right? What's the one for to finding jobs? Indeed.
Yeah, Indeed.
That one. Twitter Mexico was Indeed for for government jobs. A lot of the Twitter. Yeah, imagine that. Imagine you start supporting the next president. It doesn't matter which one. And then you and a bunch of people that follow you that were also influencers, they all end up in a department of cultural development for the indigenous people of the Northeast.
Yeah.
And they just get the job.
Ridiculous.
I saw this. No. And it was like, dude, this is like a jobs Twitter became a jobs program for political act, and they figured that one out. So we need to use that one exactly for ideas. And these guys hit the kids. And the hilarious part was that they, just so you guys know, the real kids, but still, for some reason that I'm not completely sure, but God bless it happened, the former president and vice president lowered the voting age to 16. They never in their wildest imagination would they have figured out that even the 16 to 20-year-olders, they were going to go full Milei. All of them.
Yeah.
Here, what are we afraid of? If you lower the age, they're going to end up voting a bunch of left garbage. Milei changed the culture of the youth.
Similar to what Donald Trump has done here. He has started to kind of shift that. So, for example, I looked at the data for 2020 and 2024, and it doesn't seem significant to the average person because Gen Z, the younger generation, still did turn out for Kamala. The majority of the votes still went to Kamala Harris. However, 2020 to 2024, the Democratic Party lost 10% of Gen Z. That's a massive change, whether people believe that or not.
Any swing state can switch because of that. So that actually matters, because swing states, that's going to matter a lot on maybe in Texas or California is not going to matter, but for the swing states, that's actually going to make a big difference. And I'm glad that you use that one. But and think about some people. I mean, I posted and saying, guys, come on, for both sides of the aisle, Trump is not is neither Hitler nor a mastermind that's going to solve all the problems in the universe. Right. That guy is the closest thing to a troll and he knows it, and he plays really well. Like all this thing about annexing Canada and even Greenland, I'm not really sure, but this is just making, like, dumping stuff so people talk about it, so that his name is in everyone's mouth. Whether you think is right or wrong, that's a different story.
Right.
It is effective. Right now, we're talking about it. I posted about it, and I usually don't post stuff about specific politics because I want to keep my X feed mainly about about economics. Even I sometimes even restrict myself to very specific monetary economics as much as possible, but sometimes you just can't, right? And this one was like, guys, just stop it. Now, let's say some like bunch of stuff like, oh, they're gonna make Mexico pay. Nobody in Mexico pay for any wall, but that got people excited. And guess what? Did he want votes for that? For him, that's exactly what he wanted. The interesting thing is that Milei did that to the end power because he's wild, and he was using. I think I was telling some of the youth, you have to use in their own terms. Like I remember I was telling some friends that I was during the pandemic. I was selling some gym equipment and online, and I noticed that when I was dressed up very nicely, and I would go to low income neighborhoods, they would look at me like, oh, what the heck? And I would just,
who the fuck is this? Yeah,
exactly. And then I started wearing muscle shirts, and then just some shorts or whatever, and I will go deliver the gym equipment. People were like, hey, well, for them that figure is more friendly than in my neighborhood, and that's fine. There's nothing strange. You have to provide an image, an invitation for people to learn and accept you as a person first. Then they will accept your your ideas, and this shouldn't be all that hard, guys. No one has the time to go through very detailed theoretical stuff. The only reason why people would take their time and attention, because think about it, it's taxing. Some people, I tell some libertarians, guys, you're taxing people. You're not taxing them with money, but you're taxing their time and attention. Are they really supposed to go through 5 million tweet threads about discussing the importance of money, but whatever? No. They have to trust you first, and because they like you, then they will take the time and say, okay, it is. The point is, you're okay, you want people's time and attention. That's a resource. You first have to earn the respect, so they say, okay, sure. Now I know that you're a nice person. You're worth my time and attention. And that takes
another perfect example. Look at how pivotal, and in my opinion, it was a needle mover. Look at how pivotal the Trump appearance on Joe Rogan was. Look at how many people said afterwards, they're like, I was told this guy was fucking Hitler, and by the end of this interview, I realized he's just like me. He's just a guy. Milei did the same thing.
I didn't know. I mean, I do remember that he was. I don't keep track of that one, but that's a good one. I never thought about that one. That there was a significant amount of Joe Rogan followers that never really had some type of connection with Trump, and now that they can just hear him talk, no, it's just a regular guy. Some people say, guys, it's just think about it. Some prominent business person in your town. Donald Trump is no different than that guy, and he'll do crazy stuff and wild stuff here and there because it's all. I was telling them in his book, literally, he says, "Oh, sometimes I use a lot of hyperbole." Because sometimes people don't, without hyperbole, a lot of people don't think big. But when you use hyperbole, a lot of people like, boom, they do kind of like the switch. And now they start thinking big. Maybe the thinking big is bad or good, but at least they're thinking big and they're thinking instead of just being quiet. And that's just pure marketing.
They're still thinking about it. At the end of the day, it's still like you said, it's still taking over their time and attention.
Their time for the kids as they're growing up. Their time and attention, a big chunk of that is Milei doing wild stuff. What are they going to do in the future? I want to be like that in my area, as a teacher, as a farmer, as a rancher.
When Milei did his appearances in the street, just running a chainsaw in the street, screaming like a fucking madman, people are like, what is this guy doing?
You know what?
They start listening to what he's saying, and it's like, wait a minute. Yeah, I get it. It was the chainsaw that got them to pay attention, but it was what he was talking about that got them to stay.
And the action figure. Yeah, I love that one.
Yes.
I love the action figure. And what you know what's the new one?
What was the name of it? The superhero that he did.
Oh, he I think he called himself Captain ANCAP or something like that. It wasn't a
Yes.
specific. It wasn't a specific.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. That one. He actually, just the fact that how do you call cosplay? I think they call it, because I'm not even sure what. Okay. Bunch of the cosplay community never in their life could care about how to say about politics, but they see a politician that hangs out with them and does wild stuff that they're attracted to. I mean, I don't know anything about monetary policy, but I like this guy, so more than likely that's better than nothing. So let's vote for let's vote for the guy. But you have to meet people where, I mean, I'm a Christian, right? I'm very conservative. And what was the big? You have to meet. I actually teach philosophy and apologetics, and the 1st thing I said, you have to earn their trust. If you just start going with logic and whatever, people are not going to open up. You just have.
I did that not that long ago. My buddy Chris from the Morning Mayhem. He's a Southern Baptist down in Georgia, and we did a 2.5 hour show about faith and God, and it was, we were able to have a 2.5 hour discussion going into it with an open mind, knowing that we're not going to. We know we're going to disagree, but
you see, you trust him.
Yeah, and the way and combine that with how he kind of how he explained everything. He wasn't explaining everything like a pastor. He wasn't claiming to know the Bible. He wasn't, he came into it. One of the first things he said is, I'm an imperfect person. Yes. So everything that I'm telling you is coming from the mouth of an imperfect person, just like you.
Sometimes when I tell my students, I mean, I don't talk about religious stuff in class, right? But sometimes when I can, I talk about advice, and some of my students laugh and say, "Sir, you're telling us the exact opposite of what every teacher has told us." And I laugh and I'm like, "Wait, what?" I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And then I ask them, like, "What do you say?" Like, because I always try to give them a little bit. It's kind of, if you're talking about economics, you have to give them some advice on how to manage money, how to choose your career and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then as they were explaining to me why they were saying that, I figure it out. As an economist that likes to give advice, when I'm giving my advice, I cannot stop discussing opportunity cost. Most people that give advice do not talk about that. They tell you, for example, hey, whatever you put your mind or your mind to it, you can achieve it. You just have to be disciplined. I would say the same thing, but naturally, just be ready that you're going to have to give up some stuff, which include, maybe it's worth it, time with your friends, time with your family, time with your girlfriend, time with your boyfriend. You're probably going to have to give up. And because
I gave up my apartment and moved back in with my parents. That's what it is, man. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices. There's a cost to it.
Every single American, imitate this guy. Do it. Imitate this guy. My complaint of American, my complaint about American culture, and this is a very Mexican culture thing. It makes for me that's a big shock when I talk to people that are not Mexican and Latinos. People are not Latinos. This idea that at 18 they have to kick you out of your house, for me it's blasphemy. I'm like, why do you want to go and spend money on rent when your parents are already there?
Right.
Save the money. Okay, let's say you don't want to do anything in your life. Okay, save the money and buy a better car so you can brag about it. Just for the minimum. If you're going to open a business, why do you spend money on rent when you can just be with your parents? And actually, the way we do it at home, like in Monterrey, is not just the house that we have over there, but my extended family, my dad's brothers and sisters, the ones that didn't get married, stayed in the family house. My grandma's house. My grandma died in the early 90s or something like that. And then my tias, I always have a hard time pronouncing that one. My aunts, the ones that didn't get married, they stay there, and we always go back and forth. Any problem that we have, there's always someone close to it, because it wasn't just living with my parents. If for some reason something happens in my house, you just get out to the streets, and five houses down the road, it's 2 houses where in one of my uncles and his family live, and right in front of it is the family house where everybody goes back and forth all the time. Whatever problems we have, about 20 cousins, about 10 uncles and aunts. We always know that whenever we need something, there's a family house where we can stay.
Mm-hmm.
When I run out of food, I can go eat. When I don't have a
Mhm.
place to stay, I can always stay there. And they literally tell me, "Oh, but you're one of us. Why wouldn't we open the door?" Those
Mhm.
close relationships with your family and extended family are precisely the things that prevent you from going and running, crying to the government to intervene. How to say so that someone pays for your utopia.
Mhm.
Emotionally, you have a very deep emotional connection. Like this loneliness issue, I'm not an expert on this, guys, but I have never in my life seen anyone in my family feel lonely, even the ones that didn't get married.
Mm.
We all have 10, we have at least 3 or 5 uncles above us, 10 nieces and nephews below us. And we're always a big part of their lives, no matter what. Loneliness, it's never in, like, literally, I could never imagine, like, what do you mean? What do you mean lonely?
Mhm.
Loneliness epidemic, like, how does it, and
It's
why?
loneliness is self-induced.
More than likely, this idea that you have to leave your parents' house just because you turn 18, like, I'm not against it. Like, to my students, I tell them, look, guys, if you get along with your parents, it has a double win. First, if you run like crazy from your family just because it's a custom and not because you really need it, unintentionally, you're pushing up the prices of the apartments that your friends that truly do have problems with their family are not going to be able to, and they're making it more expensive. Yes, you guys can help each other out.
California is a prime example. Look at how many people
Thank
leave
you.
and go to California. They don't have the housing to make up for it. So
There you go.
it's through the roof. New York City is another example.
That's the perfect. There you go. Everyone leaves their houses and everybody wants to go to California. What happens to prices of a place where everyone wants to be instead of being in there? Exactly. And on the other side is you're saving that money. And I tell them, like, you want to go to college? That's fine. Stay in a local college, get the degree, save the money, and go to the highest, the most prestigious university you can get. Because what matters, everyone has to accept, is the prestige of the university you go, not as a bachelor's, because everyone has a bachelor's, but it's a master's and masters and the upper degrees. That's what's going to matter. Why waste your time and resources now? And then we give examples like, hey guys, here in the university where I teach, in the summers, actually, if they ask me, I will do it. But there are programs where you can go to Europe in the summer, take classes in Spain, and all of the classes transfer. Do you really need to run away from your family when in the summers you can actually go? One that I love it, but this one is in Monterrey, my parents' hometown. Some of the guys that follow me on Twitter, young guys, they're in college in Monterrey, in Mexico, and they had a program where these guys that I've been mentoring for, let's say, the last year and a half, in their schools, they had a program to go 6 months to Argentina if you wanted to. So the bachelor's thesis on economics of one of the guys that I've been mentoring for a year and a half is going to be about Milei's economic economic policies, that he went to Argentina for 6 months to study life. That guy actually went to be even like a political activist. He would actually pass by daily by Casa Rosada, which is like the White House from over there. Once in a while, he would actually go and say hello to Milei, because when Milei got out to the front yard, go and talk to him real quick, say hello, whatever. He came out on TV twice. They were asking him, "Hey, you're a Mexican. How come you're here in Argentina?" And he was explaining, "Oh, it's because I'm an economist student. I want to learn about the new policies and all that kind of stuff." All this time, he's living either with his parents or with his grandma. He has the resources to do this very thing because he hasn't spent one dime in rent. Not one dime in rent has he spent in his bachelor's degree. He has enough resources for something big. Okay, now I have the resources. Let's go. My dream is that every single American young people stay home, not to be to save resources, to open your business, to take a big trip whenever you can. Those experiences, you cannot do them if you waste all your resources on day-to-day rent. Right. And that custom itself, it's it makes things worse, because the fact that you get out pushes up prices even more, and because it's more expensive, you have to focus only on. It's just never ending. There's no reason, if you ask me, unless you don't, and I tell my students, unless you don't get along with your parents, don't leave your parents' house.
Right.
Take summer trips. There's a program where they can go an entire year to a university close by in Monterrey. Monterrey is like a big city for South Texas. Most people have family there, so the idea of going to Monterrey and take a whole year, not the 4 years, a whole 1 year, and all the classes transfer. You say, oh, for 3 years, I'm here with my parents. My junior year, I can go to this university in a town I want to be. All the credits come over here, and then I come back and finish. Imagine if they wanted to do that for the 4 years. The amount of expenses would have been over the roof. But we already have programs where they don't have to. You just have to know how to combine them. Don't make it a cultural necessity to leave your parents' house. Make it a cultural emergency. In an emergency, be my guest. If you don't get along with your parents, you just leave. I'm the first one to tell you. I've seen, growing up, my parents' house were kind of like everyone's second house. When my friends would have a hard time with, they'll fight with their parents or whatever, my mom would open all the okay. But then again, for those cases, I'm not pushing up prices of apartments over there. I'm in my house with my parents. I'm helping my friends by opening my house and by not leaving my house like a crazy person that has to be out all the time. Thank you for being an example for everybody. This is my crutch against American culture. I love American culture.
Yeah.
That issue is like,
that's the one. Well, and and don't get me wrong. I mean, it definitely sucks sometimes because I'm going to be 30 next month, and it's like, fuck, I'm 30 years old and I'm still living with my parents. Like, what the fuck?
You're saving money.
But at the end of the day, I wouldn't be able to operate my business efficiently. Like it's one of those things. One of the first things I had to do when I started the business was I traded in a Jeep that I had that I loved. I loved this Jeep so much.
Those are the ones that hurt.
But I traded it in to get a communal van for the business. So like if I wasn't on the road working and I had 3 drivers out, I was stuck at home. I couldn't leave because I had no vehicle. All my vehicles were on the road.
Oh, my dad did exactly the same thing as you. We were sufficiently, my brother would complain that we didn't have we had enough money to have fancy cars, but all of our cars were 2 cars, that's it. 1 van for the business, and we would, and my dad, and that was my dad's, like whenever he would go and do some errand, he would use that van. He would not have like a separate thing. And then a very small, I think it was 2-door car for my mom, but it wasn't a brand new one. And we had the money to get brand new ones. And my brother was, he said, why do we travel so much? Why don't we use that money to buy a better car? And my dad was, because traveling and spending time together is much more important than having a fancy car.
Yeah.
And my brother, he would always complain all that.
Whatever. Yeah.
But the point is, you save resources for things that are more important. We have to, guess what? Economize on your resources. Sometimes it's painful, but that's what I call opportunity cost. And this translate, as I've been talking to some of the podcasters, a lot of libertarians have to understand, what about Milei did this and Milei did that, like things that they don't like. Oh, he didn't give priority to drug decriminalization. That was not his priority. Bunch of libertarians, he's not a real libertarian. I said, dude, seriously, Argentines don't care. Like, imagine telling Argentines, okay, you're hungry, but don't worry because you can get high and not go to jail. Argentines will look at you like, dude, I need to eat, like my family and all that kind of. Their priorities. There's an opportunity cost. He could not make.
We've tried that here in certain places. Oregon and Canada tried it in British Columbia, and it's like, well, it didn't solve anything. It didn't solve poverty. It didn't solve the crisis. People were just doing drugs, and it became an open air drug market. It didn't actually fix anything. So why would that be at the top of the list of priorities?
Yeah, there you go. You get there. And then the funny thing was, like, guys, and don't even complain. People can actually use small amounts for private use. Seriously, you want more than that? When we have all this is the issue. Think of, and I make jokes about this. Libertarians are amazing about talking about opportunity cost when it comes to economics, but when it comes to politics, they forget that there's opportunity cost. That doesn't exist. Politics has no opportunity cost. It's just abstract ideas. No, when you actually get together, simple. And why? And obviously, I have a bias because I'm culturally conservative, right? why is the libertarians usually do what used to be called fusionism? I don't know how you pronounce it, because I never heard it. That there was a fusion between libertarians and right wingers, at least the decent right wingers, right?
Right.
Why was that more common? It has almost never happened with the left. For me, it's simple. Forget about which of the
you were
two
right.
sides.
Fusionism. You're right.
Fusionism. Which
combines
of those
free market, social conservatism, and hawkish foreign policy.
Yeah, exactly. The hawkish foreign policy. One of the things that Milei had to put up with is he's not a hawk, but he had to do do coalition with hawks. And obviously, if you ask me, it makes sense, because Argentina makes no difference in the international politics, in foreign policy. Seriously, Argentina doesn't matter. Like, it's nothing.
Right.
So he had to go to the right. Simple. Which side is going to make it easier for you to privatize stuff? Just the airlines.
You're right. Yep.
Just forget about just the fact that the airlines used to be imagine like Amtrak here. Imagine all the airlines were like Amtrak, completely dysfunctional. Literally, jobs program, 5 people for what 1 person can do. I'm not joking. 5 people being hired because it was the government, because this and the union. And if you don't follow through, next select. Remember, it's a government business. If you don't let them do whatever they want in the airline, the union workers would vote against you.
Yep.
Do you think that letting people get high on the streets, it's going to be top priority for anybody? How are you going to privatize that? I have to side with the right. Do you like all the stuff on the right? No. Actually, if you ask me, there's a big issue about Malvinas in the Falkland Islands I'm not sure that Milei cares much about that, but the coalition said this is an important topic. Guess what he did? Let me try a solution. He didn't say what's good or bad. He said, okay, let's do a solution. What we can do is do something similar that we talked diplomatic relationships with the UK, and so we want to recover them instead of invading them, which some people want to. The solution will be to actually just ask them for us to be in charge of it, at least through administration, so that at least Argentines can go to the Malvinas and actually visit their dead. I think a lot of them are. There's some people that they had a war in the 70s or something like that. I think some of the Argentine soldiers were actually their bodies were buried in the islands, not in Argentina. Yeah. So some people cannot really go, or it's too difficult. I don't understand the details because I get into monetary policy, but that's something that it looks to me that Milei didn't care about. But in the coalition, that was a big deal. Okay, I need to give you a solution,
right,
to what the deal is. Like many times, I remember it was something about I don't remember what some people were talking about, and I give a solution, and they were trying to say, "Hey, don't Austrians disagree with this?" Oh, I think about the checks, the stimulus checks. I was like, okay, the stimulus checks maybe in 2020 made sense, but in 2021 we're in a recovery. It made no sense. If you ask me, the big issue was the checks in 2021 that push up prices like crazy. In 2020, nobody was doing anything, so it really didn't make much of a difference. And I was discussing it like this, and then some guy's like, "Wait, didn't Austrians?" I said, "Dude, someone is asking me a question, and I'm giving them a solution. I'm not trying to patronize anybody. I'm just saying I'm just comparing relative solutions from least bad to from super bad to least bad. We don't have time. We have to provide solutions. We have to create coalitions and give priorities, opportunity cost."
Well, and Milei talked about that on Lex Friedman's podcast, where Lex asked him, you say that you're an anarcho-capitalist, but in practice you're more of a minarchist. And he said, well, look, yes, I am an anarcho-capitalist, but to get to that point, you have to find ways to solve the problems in the meantime. He used the analogy of the table. He's like, if you and I are doing an interview and you like circular tables, and that, today's the only day we can do it, you can't get a circular table. You use what you have in front of you. And then maybe the next time we do have a conversation, we have a circular table.
Because we have more time and resources to do that.
Exactly.
Exactly. No, I mean, the way we tend to call them the puritanical or something like that. Libertarians in Spanish are worse, because imagine those complaints against Milei, but now in Spanish it just got worse.
Yeah.
And the way that they have not, I mean, obviously I can make some sophisticated critiques of them, but I just the simplified version for me was this. Okay, do things privatize themselves, or does a politician have to pass a legislation to privatize things? How do we privatize the roads? One of my favorite movies. Oh, how do we get rid of zoning? By osmosis, like just by we just don't obey. No. How do you get rid of zoning? You have to win the election, pass a legislation that says there is no more zoning, or it's going to be relaxed, such and such. Oh, it's because in order to do that, you have to side with Republicans and they don't let us get high. Dude, don't get high in the meantime. If you think getting high is so important, I'm not going to, seriously, I want to respect your right to get high, just don't get me involved. But I truly do want to get rid of zoning as soon as possible, because I think that's priority over you getting high or not getting high. You just got, if you get high in your house, I don't have even if I have a problem, it doesn't matter. Yeah, no. Even if as a Christian, I would say no, don't do it or whatever. But it's a private thing completely. I'm not gonna give it priority. That's it. I mean, let's just break it. I need to create a coalition with other people that I don't agree a lot, and we're gonna have to do it. And I remember even Milei has said, guys, be careful how you criticize me. I'm not. This is the genius and honesty. Be careful how when you disagree with me. That's fine. It's not that it's wrong to criticize me, but if you make it too loud in public, the other side is gonna use it against us. And I'm not against you guys giving us a critique. That's fine. Actually, what do critics usually do? They point out some mistakes you have done, and it makes you like, oh yeah, you know what? I probably need to I need to correct here, correct there, or whatever. And he has done some things like that, just so you know that. But you have to be careful how you do it. Usually, the way I do it, and this is just among friends. Whenever I see something on X, on Twitter that I don't think I agree all that much, I don't go and correct them in front of everybody. I go from the back and say, hey, dude, you know what? I think this one's wrong for such and such. Maybe we agree, don't disagree, but we're very careful. And this is the key. He says, look, libertarians are really good in economics. Our brain is designed quite literally for the future and for, this is an exaggeration, but it is, for civilization. Positive sum relationships. I give you something, you give me something I value more. Both are better off. It's a positive sum. Politics.
Milei with the basis law, getting the basis law passed.
It was, there you go, that one. How do you pass it? How do you so it says the problem with politics is that politics is a zero sum. When they have the power, the other side, I don't. When I privatize things, they cannot nationalize companies. It's a zero sum game. This is not the typical economic thinking of trade. That's why we're so good in trade. Oh, look, positive sum. By trading with foreigners are better off, and I'm better off because I have things I like. Yeah, that's fine. Libertarian. Yeah, I'm with you. But in order to privatize things, we have to get into politics. And politics is not positive sum game. It's a zero sum game. We have to win so that they don't win, so that we privatize things instead of them nationalizing things. That's the reality. That's it.
The relationship between the US and China is a prime example. The trade, look at the trade agreements. Like when you have to talk politics, it like you said, it's a zero sum game. We have these people that are insanely protectionist, right? And they're like, oh, well, we'll just raise tariffs. We'll tariff them into oblivion. And it's like, it's not that simple. You have to make gradual change, and how you do that is by deregulating American manufacturers to make them more productive.
I'm so glad you're saying this, because I was going to mention something about farmers that just real quick, that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when the tariff war happened in 2019, 2018, if I remember correctly, Trump went at it. The Chinese retaliated, but not in general, but very specific. They were taxing agricultural products from counties that voted for Trump. Do you see how mafia style these guys are? It's not just, oh, I don't like United States. No. I'm going to go get after you people. You keep doing this is mafia. You have to learn how to do these kind of things. If there was some, the manufacturing stuff. I don't worry too much about manufacturing, but obviously I have a bias because I'm from Texas and we don't have to worry about those things. Okay. Yeah, like it was. I mean, but I understand, and I want to reach out to most right wingers that have that concern. Okay, how do I try to reach out and say, look, okay, something's wrong with manufacturing. You want physical things produced here. Cool.
Mhm.
One said something like, oh, it's a matter of national security. Okay, then make the military. Okay, you think national. Okay, don't impose tariffs. Make the military be in charge of it. If the issue is national security, I understand it. And if you're realistic about it and honest, then you're gonna get the military in charge. But do you think that's no? Okay, then it's not so much a national security concern that you have in mind. You just don't want competition. Right. And then the other one is the best way, and I think is gonna, and I hope Trump and Elon do it, because and I have confidence that since they're focusing on reducing waste and firing as many bureaucrats as possible, that's my dream, that start for bureaucrats so I can go back, is don't tax foreign goods. Don't worry about it. Just get rid of all regulations and all taxes from the industries that you think that is a big problem. Say manufacturing, auto production in Detroit. Don't tax them at all. Get rid of all regulations. And it's simple. Get rid of paperwork. Don't get rid of regulations. Get rid of paperwork. Just paperwork. Maybe do this, and that, but you don't have to give me pages of reports. Just
simplify the process. That's a middle ground.
Exactly. That's middle ground. Think about what would happen. Boom, production starts to grow. The other industries are like, hey, dude,
what about us?
For them, next. And then every single industry, instead of asking for protection, what are they going to be asking? Reduce my paperwork, reduce my taxes.
And prime example of that, and I point people to this all the time, is look at the tech sector. The tech sector has grown exponentially here in the US because they're the least regulated sector. They've been able to explode.
Which one?
Because technology.
Yes.
So whether it's hardware or software, whatever it is, they've been able to grow exponentially because they're the least regulated sector in the economy here in the United States.
I think you're so correct. Oh, you know what? You just answered one of the questions we had before. I had an answer, but you complimented it so well. People were wondering, why is it that very smart people, let me try to remember, how was this one? Oh, it was something like wealthy people. Wow, it was super, because there was a lot of very smart people that were not going into, into tech, but they were going into finance. I think there was one more, but I don't remember which one's the other one. Finance and something else. I don't know. And what we're saying is like, oh, well, in the early 2000s, before the
recession,
the recession and the financial crisis, one of the reasons why a lot of smart people, even if they didn't know anything about finance, because they were paying them billions and gajillions. So a lot of people that could have gone to tech went into finance, because finance was, I mean, nobody wants to say it, by being over-regulated. This is what it got weird. By being over-regulated, it got controlled by very few firms, and those firms were intentionally bringing in the best and the brightest into financial stuff, not into technology. As soon as nobody wants to work for finance, guess what happened with technology? Boom, they go in. But how come all these smart people can quickly go into technology, as you said? Because they're very least regulated, and every company that is worthless, boom, goes out. As soon as interest rates went down, all of the bad companies disappear. In finance, as soon as interest rates went up, no, don't let this bank go down. Don't let this bank go. The more we keep them alive, the more resources they start attracting from the economy. This happened in Japan. We were saying, how come they had a very, like, they were creating a lot of money in the financial sector for the last 20 years or so, and their growth was terrible. And we were saying, it's because they're so protected. Bunch of companies that are very low productive are kept alive because they can refinance for almost nothing. And unintentionally, this is the one that is difficult to see, they continue to hire smart people, making them do stupid little things that really don't amount to much
matter.
Instead of collapsing and then liberating workers and liberating resources to go into tech, to going into oil. The oil industry, most of you guys know, the oil industry has grown exponentially. One of the reasons that is very difficult to explain is, since we do international trade, all of the smart people in technology went into oil production instead of manufacturing. Therefore, guess what happened? Fracking went up, and we became the number one. From being the number one consumers of oil, consumers and importers of oil, we became the number one net exporters Well,
Mhm.
we're still the number one consumers of oil. Like the
Yep.
growth in the oil was what happened.
Yep.
We liberated resources in order to not needing trade so much. Okay, just liberate companies so that they can grow, and we don't have to worry
Mhm.
about displaying like, okay, we need to trade with 5 million different countries or whatever, because other than that, we're not going to have enough resources for oil. Okay, sure, but if you reduce how to say barriers to entry and paperwork, then both of
Mhm.
the industries can grow. And I hope this actually gets done.
Well, and in the on the oil sector, I mean, look at the difference between Trump and Biden. Biden came in and shut down pipelines, and
Immediately.
then all of a sudden, well, and then to top it off, to artificially inflate the numbers, he started selling off our reserves to say that, oh well, oil production hasn't gone down. It's fine, but no, in reality, you have limited our resources in the process.
You know what happened? That is exactly what happened before Milei. They
Mhm.
were they were so strict on economic and exports. Exports are the ones that get you dollars. That's why they're so important. So in order to say no, things are okay, the exchange rate is stable, what will they
Mhm.
do? The dollar reserve, they will sell them to take pesos out of the financial market so that the exchange rate was somewhat stable. But guess what? They were running out of the resource because they overregulate all of the society. You cannot get enough dollars. What are you left with? The few dollars that you have, the few resources you have to be going and being spent and wasted, when they could have come to you without. All you have to do is simplify regulation, reduce paperwork, don't
Mhm.
get rid of intermediaries. Like it's really really the big issue, and things are going to be
Mhm.
fine.
Without a doubt. So, what do you think, with this relationship? Because obviously Trump and Milei are building a bit of a relationship. Milei wants to open up, better trade with the United States. You obviously have people close to Trump like Elon Musk that are either planning to or are investing in Argentina. I mean, you look at the world leaders that Milei has brought in just since he took office. He's met with Bill Gates, he's met with Elon Musk, he's met with I believe he's met with Jeff Bezos, and he's met with a lot of these incredibly powerful individuals. What do you think we can expect to see from that partnership between the United States and Argentina, should it actually materialize? What do you think we can expect to see economically, whether it's advantages or disadvantages, kind of going into that?
That's such a good question, because for sure we as Americans, the problem is that it's so far, so it makes it that the logistics are
Mhm.
not as easy. Like with Mexico, just go back and forth,
Mhm.
right? But
But if we
the
can
fact,
import from China, why wouldn't we want to import from Argentina?
because they don't have yet the infrastructure for those for the type of things that we import from China. However, the fact that we have a more, and this is but you have a good point that for some reason it just escaped to me, that a way to present it to right wingers. The more we liberalize trade with Argentina, because they like Milei, right wingers,
Mhm.
the less dependent we are of trade, because now you have not just Americans competing against the Chinese, but also the Argentinians competing against the Chinese, and that push pressure on, how to say, on puts pressure on the Chinese, and also it does diminish Chinese power. I didn't think about that one. Because if Argentina does grow, and they grow with a culture that is very, how to say, friendly to the U.S., that's incredibly. I'm so glad that you're kind of thinking through that one, because I didn't think about. There is a very nice concept, even if it's just in appearance, just the image of, hey guys, we're trading with more people than just China. We're not as dependent, even if it's very small. That causes a big impact on trade negotiations, on price negotiation. When you're dealing with a Chinese guy, say, hey, look, these kinds of things. I remember I was trying to to actually manufacture some stuff in Argentina. I was talking to some friends. Whatever you manufacture in Argentina, just because I'm gonna say Argentina, there's a little prime for Americans that do like Milei and their culture. That is a key, even if it's very small, and in the big picture is not much. That pure image that we're opening up to other countries. I never thought about that one. The best way to deal with China is opening up. It's to reduce tariffs on every other country and keep it as it is. You see what I'm saying? So the Chinese know, yeah, you can trade, and I'm not going to punish my people, but do be aware, Chinese, that you're not our only partner. We have a bunch, and usually we have Europe and Mexico and Europe. But the more you have from both, from the actual big picture and from just the image of it, that, hey, look, we're not dependent upon you. We will continue to trade with you guys, but just beware. It's not like we depend 100% upon you. Local and other production actually matters, which is what I wanted after the pandemic, because I'm okay with trading with China, but the problem with the pandemic originated there, and that actually created a lot of problems in the supply chains. You know that, right? And a lot of companies were thinking we need to leave, and I say yes. The Chinese showed that they're not really as good for business in certain situations. It should be the case that we could and should at some point quite literally start putting shop in other countries that we need. Argentina in this case. But one of the interesting things is the problem is that Brazil has a left-wing left-wing government. If we had a right wing, would be very different. But the amount of land and resources in South America are near endless. I did not know, but I think South America is wider than Russia. It's just that we cannot see it because the maps are not proportional. Right. But the length and the height of the amount of resources, the Amazon rainforest, and even in Argentina, if you guys go to the south, it almost has no population. It has very low population density. The amount of resources everywhere in Argentina are huge, and that's something American companies have not taken advantage of. That we should for sure we should definitely be taking advantage of. It does help. The more partners you have, the less economically and most important politically you become less dependent upon whatever the Chinese government says is not as impactful, if you wish, as if we don't open up to other countries. And as I told you, we should start with one country and then show, look, it works. Let's do it with the other country. Kind of like the example of, let's do with that industry that everyone's complaining about. That's fine. Deregulate and get literally just get rid of all income taxes, corporate taxes of that industry. And let's see how it works, because that's going to cause everyone around to say, oh, this actually does work. Why don't we just expand it to something else? And I think it's going to work. I think so.
So, and on that note, shifting gears a little bit, obviously we've seen a lot of success with libertarianism in Argentina. Do you think that post Milei, whether it's first term, second term, do you think that this is going to kind of lead to a renaissance globally? What do you think the implications of Milei's success in Argentina, should it, obviously be sustainable, which I believe it is? Do you think that we'll start to see that spread globally, or do you think that's going to be limited to South America?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, the last elections in Europe, the right took up on a lot of spots on almost every single country, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
As far as I can see from far away, that was Milei's doing. And this is the cool thing about Milei and Argentinians. They have very close ties to Europe for many reasons, Spain, but also in Italy. Italians do look at Argentines as like baby cousins. They like them a lot. Like, oh, it's like kind of like, and they want to hug them and all that kind of stuff.
And there was immigration agreements there for a while with Italy and Argentina, where it was very easy to become a dual citizen, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, one of the reasons why Argentine soccer players can play in Europe almost without a problem, there's so many Argentines everywhere, mainly Europe, is because most of them have a grandpa that it was from Italy. And therefore they have open access to all of the European, nations without any restrictions whatsoever. So the fact that Argentina has that so close connection, because it happened through this, everyone in Argentina, the right in Argentina loves Milei because his personality is just Italian. It's just it's a day-to-day opera with Milei, right? So for them, the Italians are kind of like that, right? So they absolutely love him. Right. the prime minister absolutely gets along with him so well. And I love it because since Italian is very similar
You
to
mean
Spanish.
Giorgia Meloni, right?
Yes, that one. And they start in national television, they start asking her, and you can see her literally glow in her eyes and the smile. And guess what? It was if I start crying, don't say anything, right? She says something that a lot of people said about my dad. The translation will be very close. Yeah, something of a stream rolling, overwhelming personality.
Yeah.
That's the best translation. You notice how they were not talking about policies, right?
Right.
The
They're
first thing they
the
come
person.
out. Yeah, and I'm telling you because, for example, I haven't been able to actually buy the book, but there's a book about one of the most famous Mexican bullfighters, and the guy Eloy Cavazos is the name of the guy. He was complaining that when he was young, he was struggling to become a bullfighter because he had a competition from, like, let's say, 5 guys, this guy, that guy, and then he finishes the paragraph saying, and from the stream rolling, overwhelming personality of Fernando Sepúlveda, my dad. So that connection was, yeah. My dad was amazing, right? I always have great stories for him. And that face she made, I honestly saw it from guys and girls when I was a kid, when they were talking to my dad. A lot of people think that it's kind of like, how to say, like some type of like a romantic thing. It's not a romantic thing. It's just a tremendous admiration of a greater than life, right? Do they call it like greater than life personality?
Yeah.
This kind of the term is stream rolling, overwhelming personality. You're like, you just like the guy. You like him or hate him, but you're not neutral about it.
Well, it's funny because you see the same thing from Millet when he talks about Donald Trump, or he talks about Elon Musk.
You read my mind, because sometimes Millet has such a how to say, a bro crush, how do you call it, man crush?
Yeah,
men crush on. Sometimes it's hilarious because there's some stuff that Millet, when Millet refers to Trump, he refers on some states that you're like, nah, dude, Trump is not like that, but it's okay. Like, it's just like, don't worry. He likes him so much that he convinces himself and tries to apologize, defend him one way or another. You can, but what you just said, that's what I had in mind. And even Millet does that to Trump. That's when I told you that when they met, he called it my president, and he just gets all excited and all that kind of stuff.
That video was he was on the verge of tears meeting Donald Trump. Like, it was so beautiful.
That is his personality. I'll try to send you the picture of the guy. But there's one professor from Spain, Jesus Huerta de Soto. I learned from him so much. My doctoral
economist, right?
Yes, economist. So if you want to see it this way, Jesus Huerta de Soto, old guy, he was the thesis advisor of Juan Ramón Rayo. Juan Ramón Rayo is it's the economist in Spain, and well, all Spanish-speaking people with the most followers in YouTube and and Twitter, and he's very active all the time. Actually, I was debating with him yesterday. I was some technical stuff, right? But like, it's not that we agree on everything. It was just some kind of technical thing that don't work. Huerta de Soto was the thesis advisor of Rayo. Rayo is my thesis advisor for my doctorate. And however, Millet never took classes, if I remember, never took classes directly with with Huerta de Soto, but he learned so much from him, and they knew each other so well, conferences and all that kind of stuff, that he just loves him so much, right? So when Millet was doing campaign, part of his campaign was appearing on Zoom meetings and podcasts like this one. No matter how small or how big you were, Millet was going to be there with you. And so some Spanish guys arranged, Huerta de Soto almost never comes out in public, but they arranged so that in the middle of the podcast recording, Huerta de Soto appears in the background. Millet just went insane, Professor! And he starts, literally, he didn't know what to do, and he starts doing this. Like a little kid. Just going.
That is awesome.
Because he's so genuine. Like, he's just in genuine. This story, I think you guys are going to like it, because
that would be me with Millet appearing. Like,
I mean,
he's retweeted me like 3 or 4 times. You should see the way my face lights up when I see him retweet me. I'm like,
Yeah, there you go. So on that one, that kind of face, that because that is his personality. Love him or hate him, there's no neutrality with him, and that's the kind of thing that libertarians have to get. What was Ron Paul? Although a very, I'm not saying quiet, but it will be tempered, soft personality, like how to say, like Ron Paul. He got the wildest people and the most soft people to follow him because his personality was so friendly. You just couldn't stop. You could not listen to the guy. When I was younger, like I don't know, I don't know if you're familiar with the Acton Institute. The Acton Institute is like a religious institution that likes to talk about politics and economics. So that's me, right? That's what I like to talk about. And so we went to a meeting close to San Antonio, and I lost the train of thought. Sorry about it, because there's so many things moving. It's actually away. So it's incredibly intense when I talk about Milei and Huerta Soto. It does hit. Oh, you know what? One of the reasons it was when technology was barely developed. I remember very well that back in the days was one of the coolest thing ever, right? I was taking my master's degree classes, and I was doing my homework in my Galaxy Note, like the how to say the tablet, not the phone. I was doing my homework, and I had the YouTube video on a corner in the tablet of Huerta de Soto, listening to him talking about economics while I was doing my my homework. So I was learning regular, what we call mainstream economics in my master's degree, while at the same time I was learning, as I was doing my homework, I had Huerta de Soto classes going at the same time. And that moment, it was like, that's why I understand Milei so well, because I know that how he felt is like probably the way I would feel. And right now, I would probably feel it with Milei, just the fact that he mentioned Austrian Economics in election trails, that's what it's called, right? In election trails. And the fact that people go and buy Austrian books for him to sign, I don't think I can express how thankful I am of him. It's just like, for me, it's like, dude, this guy is just beyond, like, just beyond belief. Obviously, I'm gonna go crazy when I talk to the guy.
Well, and he did, I guess he did for the next generation what reading Rothbard did for him, where he realized everything that I had been taught about economics was wrong. Everything that I'd been studying was wrong.
I feel so, how to say, when he was talking about I did not read Rothbard on that. I read him in on, which was kind of funny, but I was gladly to come to the same conclusions that Rothbard came. I don't know why I said that. I came to my own conclusions that way. I teach economics, and Milei was mainly microeconomics, which for everybody, how businesses work. Let's call it that way. How individual markets. He calls it a partial equilibrium, which is like one market, one industry, not all of them. And for macroeconomics, he will know more about growth, like how do economies grow and all that kind of stuff. I'm more into the monetary economics and financial side of the economy, a little bit of international trade, but that's the main thing. But I have to teach micro, like I'm not a micro guy, that's never been my thing.
Right.
But I have to teach it like micro one. And I was teaching a model, not an assumption, people get confused, a model that is called perfect competition. I learned it, I just memorized, that's it, good to go. Now I have to teach it. Since I was already well trained in Austrian economics, without reading that part of Rothbard, and I told my students, guys, I hate to teach this model because it's so stupid. That model has assumptions. The first insane assumption is, let's analyze a market where all the goods are identical. That's the first assumption in that model. How many markets, how many industries, every single product is identical?
None.
The closest is agriculture. And even that one, you and I know that not every avocado from every single farm tastes the same.
No.
So I'm telling you, the closest to that model maybe is agriculture, but that's an assumption. It's to simplify things, to make, okay, it's like a map. Don't take it too serious, that's fine. And then it was like the next one. Many, if not infinite, competitors. How many markets has near infinite competitors? Like supermarkets? No. Here locally we have Walmart, H-E-B, and in certain areas we have like Latino, Latino and Mexican, grocery stores.
Right.
2, 3. So how many companies are competing? Walmart, H-E-B, and Target, I guess, if you want to kind of mix it around, and 2 or 3 smaller ones. But it's not like Walmart is raising prices on everybody, or H-E-B is raising prices like crazy. Actually, they're trying to always keep them as low as possible. So I was like, perfect competition is not useful. Like I said, I don't think this is not useful for my students. My students are not gonna go open a business where it's identical. Within time, and the same things we're complaining, and then the lingo is terrible, and that's why I think Milei was like, yeah, he read Rodman and says, yeah, I've been messing up every time, because then you have the other side, perfect competition on one side, many same good, identical, and many competitors, like almost infinite. On the other side is monopoly, and monopoly starts no close substitute. What kind of industry has no close substitute? Water?
None of them.
Well, even water, which I found it odd. I did not know that, and some of the people I know, I would love for you guys to correct us. But some of the people in Europe, I know that since water is kind of scarce, people quite literally substitute a lot of their water drinking on a daily basis. They substitute it with wine. That's why wine is so popular over there, because it's just a daily life stuff, like juice or whatever. They don't use. They try to use water. So even water, which is the only example that I can think of that has almost no close substitute, we find substitutes. So the two models for me were like, why are we doing this?
Right.
And then the one that is more realistic has a terrible name, stupid name. It's called monopolistic competition. That phase, that you think about this, that's now how regular people use. You understand how nonsensical this is?
Well, monopolistic competition, that's in and of itself contradictory.
It's not, because the language is stupid. Obviously, a regular human being that is not that didn't take a master's degree in economics is going to say that's stupid. Like, well, that doesn't make sense. Because economists define monopoly. The word monopoly doesn't mean government forces only one seller. So monopoly means that you differentiate yourself with others. Think about how crazy that is. If you are any difference that you have with another podcaster, those differences make you a monopolist. But because those podcasters,
I do that with the delivery company. We do subscription shipping. Nobody else does subscription-based shipping where they can ship a certain number of packages for a flat price. Nobody else does that.
The government comes and says, "Oh no, we're gonna regulate you because you're a monopoly," and you're like, "How come?" "Oh, because you're the only one doing this, and we cannot see a close substitute." You see, the lingo is terrible. And Rothbard later on, I went back and said, and he says, and Rothbard said, I was like, oh great, he agreed with me beforehand. He says, even this, think about this, with this, the use of the word, forget about what it means or not. The use of the word is very bad to communicate to regular people.
Well, because when people think monopoly, they think that it's such a large portion of the market share that there's no competition. They think Amazon, they think Microsoft, and that's not the case. There are millions of other companies doing the exact same thing that Amazon and Microsoft are doing.
I'm buying a lot of there's some Brazilian products that I have to buy, and there's like that I can buy from Amazon, but I can also buy, because there's like Brazilian stores in Dallas and Chicago, and sometimes from those physical stores, I order them to send them to me, because Amazon is good that they have everything, but it's not perfect. Sometimes they don't come out. Like there's a type of a yerba mate that they sell that it has to be very well, the logistics have to be really good. Otherwise, when they arrive home, it's tasteless. Obviously, the Brazilian stores are better at doing the logistics, right? So there you go. Those two stores, one in let me be precise, one in Austin and one in Chicago, sell me stuff. They contact me through WhatsApp. When was the last time that Amazon contacted you through WhatsApp or any of your messaging?
Zero.
And the face of the lady saying, hey, this is me, I'm gonna send you the stuff whenever you need to. This is completely personalized. Because I'm Latino, they thought I was speaking Portuguese. Hey, no, I don't speak Portuguese. My parents are Mexican, but I love the Portuguese culture and all that kind of stuff. How to say Brazilian culture and all that kind of stuff. That's competition.
Right.
They're taking, even if it's small, maybe it doesn't hurt Amazon all that much. I guess some people wish it will crush Amazon, but for sure they're competing against Amazon whether they notice it or not, and they're doing good. Those are good businesses. They're good local businesses.
Well, perfect example here. Perfect example here is an app called Public Square. They are it's a more conservative based marketplace. And here I'll pull it up.
I like the idea. So we can tell right wingers to stop crying, and we can actually create these ones.
So this is a perfect example. So they literally market themselves as the anti-Amazon or America's marketplace. So you can go into apparel, right? And they just recently added their own payment processor, but Patriot Depot, Freedom Fatigues, War Tribe Gear. Previously,
these are local stores or what?
So these are all small businesses. So Yakima Apparel compared to Lululemon. So it's a small, they're smaller businesses. And prior to them actually bringing in, so when you go here, you can now add to cart. So previously, prior to Public Square, all this would do was it was like a catalog. So it would link out to the individual stores and their individual payment processors, but they've now combined it. But these are all small local businesses that are selling through Public Square. Now,
and they're competing against Amazon, whether they know it or not.
Right, even in the smallest way. Now, the cool thing with Public Square is that it is kind of a niche market. So when you sign up, like I listed my delivery business on there, and one of the things that Public Square has you commit to is that you will source, or you agree to source and manufacture as much as possible in the United States. They don't say that it has to be everything. They just simply say,
commitment. Hey, okay.
Yeah, like you're agreeing to source as much as you can, as much as your individual business can.
And the quality lets you know. If you start selling cheap stuff, people will immediately know and this is not.
Yeah. How many times have you bought something from a small business on Amazon, whether it's an Amazon FBA or whatever, and you get the product and it's like, this is shit. Why did I buy this? And I'm going to return it. Right. But, you're buying something through Public Square that is potentially sourced and manufactured here in the United States. Prime example for me is like when you look at Home Depot, right? You see Ryobi and then you see Milwaukee. Generally, Milwaukee has higher quality products, not because the actual quality of the product is better, but because they offer a lifetime warranty on their drill bits. So if you're working on a construction project and you break a drill bit, instead of going and buying a new drill bit, their quality guarantee is that if you break this bit, we will send you a new one completely free of cost.
Wow.
Things like that. So Milwaukee and Ryobi,
it sounds like more personalized, no? That the customer service.
Exactly.
The first time I came out on local TV talking about economics, it was pretty cool because I had the opportunity to say something similar to what we're talking about right now. It was guys, because it was something about something about local business and whatever, and I was telling the local business guys, this is not a online or face-to-face. Customers want both.
Right.
Local customers have an advantage over Amazon. The same thing. Amazon was like the horrible monopoly. You have a local presence where you can tell us whatever you need. I'm here for you. I can go to your house, or you can come to me and talk about it if there's a problem. Yep. But we'll for sure deliver here locally. So every single company has to find, every single local business has to find a way to provide local customers with both options. Buy online so you don't have to come, but if you want to come and enjoy customer service, you're more than welcome to come. And the point is, Therefore, Amazon is not a, how to say, is not a monopoly. Maybe for political, and you see, we're going from positive sum talking to negative to zero sum talking.
Zero sum.
Maybe because of Amazon has a lot of political power because they're so big, and therefore they can, how to say, lobby some regulation. Whatever. Okay, that's fine, but then that's a different issue than economics. Why is it that rich people can easily lobby your elected politicians to pass regulation against you? That's not an economic problem.
And not just that, but it's because of what you said earlier. Politics corrupts business.
Exactly.
If you remove that, well, for me, a prime example and something that I rail against constantly is the fact that Congress has the ability to trade stocks. So, our congressional leaders are trading Amazon stock when they're legislating over them. So naturally, what do those politicians want to do?
Against them.
Yeah. So, and what are these politicians going to legislate? They're going to legislate in favor of the companies
of their own net worth. Of their own net worth.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
And by the way, let me come back. So the whole thing about the monopoly and all that, I was like, this is you actually can see me 2022. I was still whining because it got a little bit of a steam. We have to stop using the word monopoly in economics because what we talk about monopoly has nothing to do. And I was complaining. The word monopoly in economic theory, it became like back in the 1700s, it was a government grant says you're the only one in all of this that can sell this. That was monopoly. They switch it for who knows what problems to be, I think is that their value theory was so bad because back in the days they didn't have what we call the subjective value theory, that what is valuable to you is not valuable to me or whatever. A lot of the economists in the 1800s were looking at cost because you can measure cost. So people were obsessed with measurement and said, no, but the price and the value of things depends upon their cost. If it costs more, it's because it's more valuable. And then Menger comes along late 1800s and says, no. The cost is high because someone is paying for it. And therefore entrepreneurs are saying, okay, let me continue to do this costly process because although it's costly and I don't want to pay, someone is actually covering my cost. But is the customer the one that ends up deciding? And not all customers are the same. Therefore, value is subjective. I hope that makes sense. Since before Menger, they were going through like, okay, cause this, cause that, and then they were noticing that there were some stuff like, for example, like antiques, like how to say, pieces of art and so on and so forth. Since they were not reproducible, they said, well, those people that own those specific, how to say, pieces of art, they have a monopoly. You see how the word got corrupted because they're only sellers.
Our antitrust laws here in the United States, for example, like Google, they just said, oh, well, Google has a monopoly on the search engine market. No, they do not. Brave has their own search engine. Mozilla has one. Everyone has one, but the Brave is another browser, for example. Like they have their own built-in search engine. You have Bing, you have all these other companies, but yet they're targeting Google and saying, hey, you have a monopoly on the ad revenue.
AI sometimes does the Googling for you. You don't have to Google, hey, please find me this stuff, and then AI and how many AI is different, Grunk or whatever whatever the heck that you want. So
and they tried to say the same thing on the advertising market. Well, no, Google doesn't have a monopoly because they're forcing people to, because they have the largest market share. They're not forcing anybody. You can go advertise through other channels.
So and like Public Square, because there's niche, because they're acting like niche markets don't exist, and that's crazy. Well, you see how the word got like they started with the pieces of art because they were so obsessed. Well, actually, Marx, one of the problems of Marx is precisely they was like, just like the old classics, Ricardo and all that, they have some good ideas about free market, but they messed up on the value theory. And then Marx used that one and was saying, my theory doesn't work for those examples. It only works for, how to say, for reproducible goods. So the word monopoly and the labor theory of value, which is behind all of Marx stuff, came out of making that linguistic mistake from going from monopoly is a state granted privilege that only you can sell, to it also include at some point pieces of art because they're not reproducible. And then at some point, monopoly became any distinction you have with your competitors. Any distinction you have with your competitors, that's called monopoly. That's why they said, literally, the most realistic model for microeconomics that I use, by the way, is called monopolistic competition. If a regular person reads that, it's going to sound like I'm in favor of monopoly because I'm using, or that I'm talking nonsense, monopolistic competition. It actually, when I teach it to my students, I say, guys, this is called, the way I tell, right? Either imperfect competition, which is still dumb, but it's better than monopoly competition, or process competition. It takes you some time to kind of to find different, to differentiate yourself with others. Is not immediate, right? It takes it's going to take some time. Or the other one that people get right away, close substitute competition. And the best example is fast food. When you go for lunch, you can get tacos, you can get chicken sandwiches, you can get hamburgers. They're all competing. That they're not separate industries. You can say they're not separate products because they substitute so close to each other. That's why they cannot just raise prices like crazy. When you want to differentiate yours, imagine saying that Chick-fil-A is a monopoly because nobody sells chicken sandwiches as good and with such a great customer services. We need to.
That's ridiculous.
Imagine, think about this, that how the lingo is so stupid. We're supposed to call them monopolies because they're the only ones that have such a high combination. Great food and great customer service. And because of that, they raise the price. And guess what? Customers don't mind paying a little bit more price because the customer service, actually, when you're sad, just go to Chick-fil-A. They prompt you up. Well, so Rothbard and Millet responded to this. This is just stupid. We need to, and actually the great thing is that I ended up finding some mainstream economists, historians, God bless, saying we need to use the Austrian competition model. That is pretty much the same thing than the monopolistic competition model, but the whole thing is just dumb because nobody's going to understand what the heck we're talking about. And so we started using different lingo to that one. And the way that we use, at least among Hayekans, is process competition or clause competition, because the point is a process. You open a business that you kind of know what's going on. You look at your competitors. Maybe your differentiation is very small. You learn to differentiate yourself within time. You're not being a monopolist. You're just different.
No.
You're just differentiating yourself. This is
power tools. I go back to that.
Millet did the switch from typical neoclassical economics to Austrian economics precisely because he didn't feel comfortable. And think about this. It's just the lingo. It's not even like, how to say, it's not even like an actual content problem. It is the lingo that got inherited and nobody wanted to, how to say,
it's the same information, just given differently.
Exactly. So and we have the math. We don't even have to worry about like, no, that's too mathematical. No, we have the math already. Like the model is not bad. The lingo is terrible, and that it developed. That's what changed Millet, and that's one of the key issues that made what we have today. Is that he said something's wrong with economics, we need to change it. And as he's trying to do that, guess what? He says something's wrong with Argentina. We need to change it. And without noticing, now what is he doing? Unintentionally, there's something wrong with the world, and we need to change it. And that's how he went.
You know, it's so interesting because you touched on a very important point that people, I think, miss a lot, and it's something that Millet has talked a lot about, and that's the idea of language. Yes, and it's all about language. It's all about how it's conveyed.
That the pictures you put on someone's mind. If you put a bad picture in the mind, doesn't matter how good you are. If it's different than what you have in mind, if those images in mutual do not match, they're not going to listen to you because they're going to think something else.
Right.
So that's the issue. Oh, you know what? I need to leave against my will. Yes. We need to do this again.
Let's do it. Let's get it set up.
But it's just that I'll have.
You've got to do adult things.
It was the most American thing in my life I ever heard. It was like, oh man, adulting is hard, and I'm like, there's this
life is hard.
Life is hard. No, the one that is hilarious is like Americans don't know this, but this is gonna shock every single one. Well, I mean, farm people understand this one better. that in pretty much all Latin America, unless you're kind of like middle class, your dog has to have a job. It has to help you at home.
Yeah.
Or in the bit when there was something like they would. Do you remember the dogs that were the waiters? Sometimes they would actually go and they would actually train the dog to be the one. And says, how come? I mean, we're poor. If we don't actually make money, we don't get the dog to actually do something productive. We're not gonna have enough food for the dog. So we love our dog so much that we need to actually make him do because we don't have enough. Yeah, like you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We don't have enough resources for that. But I mean, we have. And so that's why I love it when I hear that. I say, oh, I hate adulting, and I said, dude, in Latin America, even dogs have to have a job when they're born. So
yeah,
you guys are complaining about nothing.
It's we're just entitled. You know, it came back to that post last night. You know, it's
I'll send you the and a post that was pretty good because I have a couple of economists of old. Andolfato, he's mainstreamer, but very nice. So he explains to you the like this lingo stuff. He's very good at. And I was complaining about like how people take things for granted, and then I tag him and I said he's Italian descent. He's from Canada, but his parents were born and raised in Italy, so he's really close to the Argentinian culture. Andolfato, his name. So I tagged him and said, Dr. Andolfato, can you please come and heal my economy? I told him that he always have a great human insight because he's very human, he's really nice, to my economist heart, because my economist heart is thinking of opportunity cost, all the mechanical stuff. And I hate that people take things for granted, right? And he posted a joke by Louis C.K., I think. Yeah, Louis C.K. So I'll send it to you. And the guy is saying that, dude, everything is awesome, but no one's happy. And that's because it takes us 5 seconds to take things for granted. And the example he gave, it was like there was never Wi-Fi on the on the airplane. Never.
Right. Never.
When they finally open it up, people were like, oh, that's great or whatever. 10 minutes after, they cut it off because something happened. And instead of like, oh, so it was cool, the guy next to him immediately said, oh, that's BS. And then Louis C.K. say, this guy took him 10 minutes to think the universe owes him fast
Wi-Fi
internet in an airplane going from LA to New York that back in the days used to take 20 years to make it from one place to the other, and it's taking him less than 6 hours. And that guy just took it for granted. He's sad and unhappy because he doesn't have the fast internet that he didn't have 20 minutes ago. It's just
unbelievable.
The adulting thing is hard these days.
Right, no kidding. Well, before we close this out, tell everyone where they can follow you and stay up to date.
Okay, follow me on X, Twitter, Aaron Sepúlveda-Cue. Find me there. It's pretty much everything I have. I'm always posting about the economy of the United States, obviously the economy of Argentina, and sometimes the economy of Mexico, just because my parents are from Mexico. Once in a while, but I haven't done it in a while, and probably less. El Salvador, I used to keep track of El Salvador a lot because of the Bitcoin stuff, but that's doing away, so it's not as used to it. And I'm trying to think. I don't think I actually post once. I don't post about it. I usually don't post about anything precisely because I don't even post about religious stuff that I get. If you guys want to follow me, I'm the admin of the Libertarian Christian Institute on X, and there I post a little more varied stuff, which includes obviously, actually, many times I don't even post in my main account because I wanted to keep it as professional, as economic as possible. Even libertarian theory, I don't post all that, a little bit, but not that much. But in the Libertarian Christian Institute, I do post stuff on how Christian and that's me, Christian and Christianity and libertarianism, respecting people's property rights, are perfectly compatible with each other, and so therefore I post things on economics, things on politics, so on and so forth. That's the main thing. On Facebook, follow us, Libertarian Christian Institute, also, and I have some articles in the Libertarian Christian Institute, a website that are usually related to economics.
Wonderful, dude. Thank you so much for this. This has been eye-opening 3.5 hours. I look forward
I
to
know.
doing this again, man. Thank
Yeah,
you
we-
so
we
much.
definitely will, because there's so many things happening that it's wild.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Tons
See
of
ya.
blessings, everyone.